All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have another Domination tournament. It is Friday night after all. It's getting into a bit of tradition at this point, but yeah, we're here for another one, and this is a no houseplant tournament, hence the name, no plants allowed. We didn't disband him from playing or anything, he just wasn't able to make it this Friday. He had other things going on, but that does present the opportunity for some other players to get a bit of a chance to get a little glory for themselves. So our first matchup for the semifinals today is going to be Rinless and Subutai for our first best of three. Take a look at the bracket and how things are looking for the rest of the matchups. So we are still waiting on one of the games to finish up. That is going to be Svartenbeer, or it is going to be Tim the Wilder taking that top spot. They will be up against Dadak, as we have seen him in the prior tournament. So it'll be good seeing him back again. So we'll switch back to our kind of intermission screen before we kind of get things underway. Picks are being taken. So we first up is going to be Rinless. He is going to be going with Tzeentch and Ogres for his pick 2. And then Subutai did respond picking Khorne, and it is going to be Tzeentch following things up. So Tzeentch Khorne, fairly even matchup overall. Khorne has a kind of an overall innate resistance to the winds of magic that Tzeentch is going to be able to throw their way, but they're still going to be able to kind of do some decent work against Khorne nonetheless. So we'll see how things kind of fare on both sides. We do have Rinless ready to go for his side of things. Still waiting on Subutai to finish up his army. But what Tzeentch does have going for them is they're going to be able to get lots of volume of fire down on Khorne, though they can also kind of mix things up, go for a little bit more melee-centric build. Forsaken Spawn do some pretty decent work against the forces of Khorne, especially if they do go pretty heavy into the regular Chaos Warriors, because considering how Spawn and the Halberds do kind of struggle a bit against a rather missile-heavy Tzeentch army. So we'll see which way things are going to be going. First map is going to be crossing the Sea of Claws, so it can provide some choke points for Tzeentch to kind of capitalize on. They're going to be able to kind of try and hold Khorne to more of a tighter spot, what they're going to be going up against. But we should be getting into our first match fairly soon, and we'll kind of keep tabs on our other game going on the top half of the bracket, just to kind of take a little peek, see if that match is going to be wrapping up. I think there should be playing just now, but since we are best of 3, that is a best of 1. They should be raring and ready to go, or should be finished up by the time we are finished up on this fight. And Subutai is ready now, so that means we are going to be getting into our first game of the evening. Should be some exciting stuff. And I don't even know, we probably saw Tzeentch a couple times on the last one, though I know it was definitely a Khorne and Nurgle jamboree last week, so we'll see how things do fare. So let's switch that scene on over to the other side, give you guys a glimpse at what the armies are going to be looking like moving forward, and we are going to be seeing that Forsaken Spawn from Tzeentch, but the forces of Khorne are going to be responding pretty heavily with some nice anti-infantry with those dual weapon Chaos Warriors, so they will be able to finish off those Forsaken pretty quickly, not bringing any Lords for Tzeentch to kind of capitalize their own shooting abilities on. So we'll see how things gonna kind of shape up. So I think I do have to kind of slow things down just a bit here, kind of dial back before getting in. So for the, actually that did not save. There we go. Nice smooth sailing from this point on. So we have some blue horse, 4 units of those for the Tzeentch army, going to be led by Rinless, and then it is going to be Forsaken, 2 Spawn, and of course we do have the Herald of Tzeentch going to be up on its floating disc. Going to be bringing the Locust Conjuration, Chromatic Tome, as well as Blue Fire, Infernal Gateway. Infernal Gateway does excellent work against the very tightly packed formations. That is going to be Khorne, and that is pretty much it, other than the Fires of Change lore passives and the Arcane Conduit. Now for Khorne, we are going to be seeing those double cultists. They are going to be both on horseback, and they do have that Gate of Khorne as well. So they do have the Sword of Anti-Heroes as well, giving some extra damage and armor piercing to boot as as well. Chaos Warriors to kind of absorb all of that horror fire, and then it is going to be those dual weapons trying to really deal with the Forsaken, and some chaos or some Spawn of Khorne as well should do some good work. Also in terms of just overall damage, considering they have a whopping 190 weapon strength, much better than that of their opponents on the Tzeentch side of things. But they are going to be going for a rather spread out formation by the looks of things for Khorne. They're going to be throwing some units towards 3 and then moving the rest up the ridge, kind of putting some pressure on 1 and 2. While Tzeentch is going to be funneling all of their forces down towards 2 and 3, with the bulk of them is going to be arrayed right on that center point, and they should be able to kind of, they definitely should be able to put up quite a vicious fight, especially kind of able to get these dual weapons kind of fired down with these blue horrors, as they will be able to get some nice decent shots on them. But Khorne's probably going to be wanting to keep them nice and out of range and let all of those Chaos Warriors with their 100 armor and silver shields do all of that absorption of the missile fire. So Tzeentch just getting set up on their own points. They're going to be using the choke points here around point 3, in between point 2 and 3, just kind of give themselves as much cover as they can. Going to be either forcing Khorne to kind of just punch right through them, or going to have to take that long route around, try and get on the other side. But there is, of course, both of these cultists. They do have those summons, so they'll be able to just kind of charge right into melee nice and quick. They are going to be using that terrain to kind of just keep themselves nice and safe from that Herald of Tzeentch. So they'll be able to drop those summons right into the back line if they so do want to, or trying to deal with these Forsaken on that front line, kind of leaving those Spawn all by their lonesome. And we do have the Herald of Khorne going to be coming down from the reinforcements for Khorne. Going to be having that Locus of Wrath, that plus 40 melee attack is a very nice ability there, and of course he does have his innate Hellblade. Going to be coming in for some nice juicy damage there, and some more lovely dual weapons and some halberds are going to be making their way down the field. Halberds going to be looking to try and deal with all of the Spawn on the field. 3 units of Spawn so far for Tzeentch, so plenty of nice targets for them. They are just going to have to be a little bit cautious and just kind of patient in trying to get that engagement. And those dual weapons definitely going to be wanting to get some work in against those Forsaken. Now off onto the flanks, we still have this 1 unit of Spawn, which is pretty isolated at the time. Definitely want to be reuniting with at least some infantry here. These guys will not fare very well in just individual melee, as now these Chaos Warriors of Khorne probably getting engaging a little too early, as they are going to get charged by Forsaken and Spawn, though they do have both of these cultists here to support. So one of these cultists probably definitely would like to drop some of their summons. One is going to be dropping it kind of to stem the tide of Tzeentch, as the Spawn and these Forsaken going to be held up by all of these Bloodletters here. The other summon would actually do some very nice work if they did come in, but the Spawn here are taking a little bit of damage, but most of that is just going to be absorbed by that shield, and we are going to be getting a rear charge in from the Spawn of Khorne, but they are going to be sandwiched between a unit Forsaken and those blue horrors. And now they are Rampage. Just a single volley at point blank range does a ton of damage, and a little something with those Spawn is they Rampage for an exceptionally long time here. Definitely not by design, but they are going to be stuck in melee, and I don't think they are going to be leaving it anytime soon, and especially without the support is going to be rather gruesome stuff indeed for them. We do get a very nice Infernal Gateway dropped on top of these Chaos Warriors, as well as some bullets from the heavens, as they are going to be whittling down those Chaos Warriors bit by bit, and not a whole lot of damage has been done to the Forsaken or those Spawn, and that Herald of Khorne has taken a ton of damage so far, so Tzeentch way ahead in that damage at this point, solidly in place at point 2. Point 1 probably has a little too many units for Khorne. They definitely need to start focusing some more on that center point, starting to pull a few of those units away from the center point. Those center units of Spawn taking all of that massive amounts of damage, is kind of expecting going in without any infantry support, and they just get rinsed very, very quickly indeed. These blue horrors in the back are going to be taken out by these Bloodletters with the help of the cultists, but so far Tzeentch is in a fantastic position at this stage in the fight. They've been able to get so much damage done against some very important units for Khorne, like the cultists, the Herald, all of which have taken a lot of damage, and all these units off on the sides here are going to take a very long time to kind of start putting some pressure, and they still have a formidable presence here in that center point. We have plenty of horrors, 2 blues, 1 pink, Forsaken Spawn, so that is still a very formidable foe there, trying to get rid of them is going to be a tall order, especially with the loss of these flesh hounds here in the center ranks. Those screamers of Tzeentch do excellent work against them, considering they do have that bonus versus large. So those flesh hounds go down very, very quickly, and we do have the second Infernal Gateway, and this is going to be a juicy, juicy target. Those Chaos Warriors of Khorne and those dual weapons are all just going to get completely taken out. The Herald as well goes down, and things are looking very grim for Khorne at this stage, as all of these there's piles of dead Khorne warriors. Just two casts of that Infernal Gateway has just littered the ground with tons and tons of heavy armor, and Tzeentch is looking very, very strong indeed. We do have some Chaos Furies, though, from Khorne, going to be trying to at least put some pressure onto that Herald of Tzeentch, while the rest of the Tzeentch forces, having dealt with the spawn and those summons on the lower fields, are now going to be kind of pushing up to contend against these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, and the Forsaken should be able to get right into melee while both of these blue horrors pepper them with fire, and without any support, I don't think they are going to be very long for this world. Furies do get pulled down into all of the other Tzeentch units, and we do have 2 units of the Tzeentch Chaos Furies are going to be looking to peel these guys off and free up some space for the rest of their army. And take a look at the center battle, as that is now getting underway in terms of melee. These dual weapons are going to be engaged with multiple units, though, of Tzeentch, and they are going to be pushed back. And yeah, seeing things not going so way for Khorne, that was a very, very good show by Tzeentch there. So we'll take a look at the after battle report, as I believe Brynless does take that first fight for Tzeentch. So we'll update that scorecard real quick to 1-0. And then we'll kind of go over the armies as they were. So Tzeentch obviously doing very well in that fight. The Herald of Tzeentch, those 2 casts of the Infernal Gateway, getting 2,400 pretty much just from those 2 casts. We did have some blue fire and some shots coming in from them, but a lot of that value. It hit a total of one of the regular Chaos Warriors, and then the second cast hit a dual weapons and that halberd unit, so it did a ton of damage there. Spawn really didn't have all that much time to really generate a ton of value. Forsaken, though, did quite well, as did the blue horrors already, most of them getting some pretty decent damage in it. Didn't even see those exalted flamers. The spawn coming in, though, did some very good work, as did a lot of the reinforcements. Screamers actually not getting as much damage as I had thought. They did get engaged with those flesh hounds on the other side, and yeah, they got really taken down really quickly, so they weren't able to generate a ton of value on that end. Herald of Khorne also fallen very, very flat, got stuck in with some spawn, and just kind of got beat down pretty severely. Nothing really getting much of anything on the Khorne side. But that is it for our first game. But we still have some games to go, so Subutai may be down, but he is not out. So for our second match, it is going to be on Arnheim. So we are going to be having some bit more open fields there. We do have a little bit of choke points up on the top, but this is going to be a map where we might very well be seeing Nurgle here. So for Brynless on his picks, he is going to be going with Tzeentch and the Ogre Kingdom. So actually no, that is from the last one. So yeah, Brynless picked first on the last one, so it is going to be Subutai picking on this next one. So we're just going to be waiting on his picks. So yeah, I would not be surprised to be seeing some Nurgle here with that big Chungus. That sitting right on that hill between the top point and the middle point is a very nice spot for him. It does not have to move very far to get some pressure on either of those. And it is a very long walk if you do want to change your objectives. If you are trying to take the top or bottom points from either side, just where the spawn points are, you got a long way to go if you want to get back down into that plains. So yeah, we're just kind of waiting on some picks here. It looks like Subutai is typing, and he is going to be going with Nurgle or Tzeentch for his pick 2. So we'll see what Brynless is going to be responding with. He has already used Tzeentch, so he's not going to be able to have them on the table. Ogres might not be a terrible choice here. Just because of having that range against Nurgle, you kind of want something that's going to be able to get some nice, decent ranged against them. Kislev might be able to do okay in that respect, though with the limit to their chariots right now, they're not going to be able to be everywhere at once, even though 2 chariots is still pretty strong at this point. Yes, good morning indeed for those on the other side of the ocean. For here, it is still night. And the night is still young. and we are only just begun. So yeah, we are on our second game of the night, or waiting on the second game of the night, so we'll be getting into that fairly quickly as soon as Rinlis does get his next picks up for what he's going to be going with. And Rinlis did take that first one in the Tzeentch-Khorne matchup in pretty convincing fashion there. And while we're waiting, I suppose we can kind of take a little peek at what the bracket on the top side has, see if that is decided. So it looks like Svartfinnbeer and Tim the Wilder has still yet to have a decider in their match. Hopefully they're currently in match now and will be done by the time we're going to be turning our attention back to the top side of the bracket, because the winner of that matchup will be facing Dadak in our second semi-final of the evening. So we are seeing some repeat contenders here for sure. So let's take a look back into the Discord. So it looks like Rinlis is going to be going with Khorne, though, and Subutai quickly on the response going to be going with Nurgle. So on a open field, this would probably, or some where there's a bit more avenues to get to the other points, Khorne would have a bit more of an advantage here. But with how close these two positions are, Nurgle definitely does have a pretty formidable, or a pretty strong chance, I should say, at kind of doing some pretty decent work. Though we'll see if Subutai, I know he definitely has been playing some pretty good Nurgle as of late, so he might have just the tools necessary, or I suppose it's a Nurgle favored matchup, so I kind of got that first, but it's going to be pretty hard for Rinlis here, I think, to kind of eke out a win against the blob of Nurgle. Both sides are ready to go, so not too much thought going into both of the army selections. It looks like they had their selection pretty much wrapped up, so let's switch that scene over so we can get a little sneak peek at what we're going to be facing. So as for Rinlis on Khorne, we are going to be seeing Herald of Khorne, and it does look like we have the Revel and Slaughter and the other AoE ability, 2 Cultists, 2 of the Exalted Bloodletters, and then we're going to be seeing 3 of the dual weapons and 1 of the regular Chaos Warriors. Now, regular Chaos Warriors here, normally not so great. Probably just a bit of that is what they could get for funds, because the Halberds or the dual weapons, or even Bloodletters, I would say, are a much better pick than those Chaos Warriors. Chaos Warriors just aren't going to be able to do much in other than just have a little bit extra melee defense and going to be able to hold those points, but they're not going to be able to really damage a Nurgle, and you really do kind of want to take them down as quickly as you can. So for the Herald of Khorne, we are just seeing what he had on his kit, so he does have that Locust Raft and that Revel and Slaughter. So 2 AoEs to kind of buff things up. One is in melee, the other is a activatable ability, so that plus 40 and then an additional plus 8 and plus 8 leadership. Very nice units there, and plenty of anti-infantry to kind of chew through the plague bearers that we'll be expecting to see on the Nurgle side. And for Nurgle, we are going to see the big Chungus himself, that Exalted, a Great Unclean One. He is going to be looking to take that top point first and foremost, and he is going to be having the Blight Swarm, Stream of Corruption, Fleshy Abundance for those nice juicy heals, then Cloud of Flies, and of course he is going to be having that Fetid Stench as well as Children Nurgle, and that Pestilent Decay, that Mortis Engine ability, going to be dragging things down. We are going to be seeing 2 of the Exalted Plague Bearers here with their ranged ability, actually 3 of them, so I probably would have gone with more of just the regular Plague Bearers here, but the Exalted Plague Bearers can get some pretty decent shots in, and they do have a Beast of Nurgle, Cultists of Nurgle, 2 units of those, and the Cultists, they do have some abilities that they would like to be bringing, so that Icon of Eternal Virulence is one of them, kind of just debuffing your opponent's abilities to kind of deal with your own blob. And then he does have the Cloud of Flies and that Gate of Nurgle as well. And the other Cultist is going to be bringing pretty much that same kit. Actually exactly that same kit on the other side, so plenty abilities to be kind of going for them, much more so than probably the Cultists. We're going to be seeing some Spawn going to be coming in, not a whole lot of anti-large though. Most of these units, you're not going to be able to see them for at least for on the Nurgle side, so they're not really sure what the Khorne forces, or at least from Nurgle's perspective, and then kind of on the flip side, I think Khorne isn't going to be able to see too much, but they do have some units up in the tree line as their fast movers. The Exalted Bloodletters and that Herald are going to be up in the tree line, just keeping tabs on the rest of the Nurgle forces. But Khorne definitely going to not want to be tangling with that upper blob, and are instead going to be pushing their luck onto the lower forces. Now they will have to get some units up there to put some pressure on point 3, but for now point 2 and point 1 is going to be trying to be capped by the Khorne forces and just hold that while Nurgle kind of gets set up on the front and then start to put pressure on both sides. And that is what those two exalted plague or bloodletters are going to be for up on that top hill. And we are going to be getting some units of spawn on the lower field for that nice DPS and get them surrounding that exalted great and clean one, and they'll be able to do a bit more damage. But of course they would like to have that Herald of Khorne down to kind of help them out with his buffs. But at this time, yeah, they do not have that advantage, and that exalted great unclean one is just going to be parking himself kind of right in the middle here, so he's going to be able to kind of respond as quickly as he can, at least, to any threats either on point 3 or point 1, wherever he does deign to go. For the time being, they are probably going to be pushing up with their exalted plague bears and trying to get whatever shots they can off with them, because those will do some quite nice work. But it looks like both of these cultists are going to be charging for maybe trying to get some damage in on the big Chungus himself, but the cultists, they are only going to be on foot, and they don't have any other items to help them out, so it is just the Gate of Khorne, but they're going to take whatever free shots that they can, just away from the rest of their units, so they're not going to be suffering from that Mortis engine. But those Exalted Plague Bears are going to be sitting right up and close, and looks like they're going to be getting some point-blank shots, but not doing a whole lot to these single entity targets, and they're going to be wanting to use most of those probably towards the rest of like the Chaos Warriors would probably be very good targets against that. And the Chungus is going to be charging down the hill, but that is going to be pulling him away from the rest of his formation, and that is probably exactly what these cultists are going to be kind of trying to do here, but they don't have a whole lot of units that can follow up very easily. Off onto the distance, we do see some of the Plague Toads can be coming in themselves for a little bit more additional mobility, some mass, and some capture power as well, getting them just kind of stuck in on these points. But point 1s and point 2 is going to be under control by Khorne on the early stages of this fight, and they are just kind of be arrayed, kind of fairly spread out. They do not want to be too close, but these Exalted Plague Bears getting some very nice shots against those dual weapons and taking them down to about half health already. Seeing some summons in with those Flesh Hounds, and now those Exalted Bloodletters are going to be charging forth from the tree line, well out of range of that Exalted Great Unclean One to help them out, though he is going to be starting to waddle his way back up the hill. Cultists are going to try and drag his attention back, but that is going to put some very formidable pressure on that top point, and is going to force Nurgle to respond at least a little bit, because these spawn and these Chaos Warriors definitely would like to kind of probably peel off these Plague Toads away from that Exalted Great Unclean One, and it looks like they're going to be trying to do that. They do get a nice little charge into the Cultist Khorne, and the rest of these units are getting some nice free engagements while that Exalted Great Unclean One is pretty much distracted. And that's exactly what Khorne needs to do for the rest of this fight, is kind of keep that Exalted Great Unclean One out of melee for as long as he can. But now he is going to be charging right on in, and we're going to be seeing everything start to drain bit by bit. And here is that initial early summons from those Plague Bears, going to be trying to tie things up against these Chaos Warriors on the downhill side. But then up on the top, we're going to take a look at how these Exalted Bloodletters are going to be doing, and they are doing very, very well indeed. The Exalted Plague Bears are taking an insane amount of damage in comparison, pretty much no damage at all from these Bloodletters. Plague Bear summons is going to be coming down, but none of these units really have the DPS to deal with all of these Bloodletters. And a very nice swing on that top field set is going to be very nice for Khorne, while the big chunk is down on the playing fields is going to be still engaged melee, draining what he can, but those units from Khorne are going to be trying to pull themselves out of that Mortis engine range, and just kind of look for their attacks elsewhere. And again, that is just going to be trying to play ping pong with that Exalted Great Unclean One, and so far they're doing a very good job of playing exactly the type of match that they need to when they're very comfortable holding that far point. And if we're going to swing back over to the top and see just how things are going there, well, Nurgle so far has been able to hold this top point. They are not faring all too well, as these Exalted Bloodletters are just lawnmowering their way through all these units. Even these plague toads are not going to be up to the task, and they are just dropping like flies, while the rest of the units, the spawn, getting munched on by the flesh hounds, and then these plague bears, which are summoned, will not be lasting all too long themselves. And again, those exalted plague bears, but we're going to be seeing some nurglings just trying to throw their weight around, just getting some capture power here onto that top point, while Nurgle tries to drain everything that they can on the lower fields. Now, there's plenty of healing in the tank for this Exalted Great and Clean One. He is going to be using that Overcast Fleshy Abundance, going to be trying to get some heals in, trying to get as much back from these Exalted Plague Bears, but they are unstable, so they are going to be slowly disintegrating into the ground, even though they do have that heal. But I don't think it's going to be enough to stabilize them, especially with those bloodletters all kind of surrounding them, and they are going to be kind of slowly dissipating, so that might free up those Exalted Plague Bears with that threat kind of gone. But again, they do not have a whole lot of just assistance left for the Nurgle side, and Khorne is looking very strong here. They are up 4,000. Now, normally that wouldn't be too bad of an issue here for Nurgle, considering that they have some pretty insane healings, and they have gotten some so far in this fight, but I don't think it's been to the tune of 4k at this point in the fight already. And if we take a swing back up to the top, we're seeing these Flesh Hounds and all of these Exalted Blooders, again, keeping all of that infantry just keeping them in check, but they still do not have the capping power that they need to take to cap 3. But while Nurgle is at the same time very much struggling to take this lower point, and Khorne, again, doing a very excellent job keeping their units out of the range of that Exalted Great and Clean One, just on the fringes, but not so close that they can drain them down, just feeding things in one at a time and trying to just whittle down all of the support. And now that Big Chungus is going to be completely devoid of any infantry support. He does have that Beast of Nurgle still there, but we are going to be able to see maybe a bit of a chance here to kind of deal some damage to him. But both of the cultists are going to be running up the hill, looking to kind of put the final nail in the coffin on point 3. But Nurgle has done a very good job of just holding the Plague Bears, those Nurglings, just buying all the time in the world for the lower units of Nurgle. But Nurgle is going to be running slowly out of time, as Khorne is up by about almost 1,500 points at this stage, and that balance for the damage hasn't really changed too much in the last few minutes. So things are maybe stabilizing a bit for Nurgle, but they definitely have a bit of a long road ahead of them if they're going to be wanting to extend this series, as Subutai definitely needs this win. And we are going to be seeing more Bloodletters, a nice fresh unit, going to be charging forward with their extra speed, so they're going to be getting right on in, and Khorne is going to be looking to take point 3 as they're able to kind of push back the last of the Toads and the Nurglings. Some reinforcements are coming, but it is going to be just a little too late. Even those Exalted Plague Bearers, they just don't have the DPS to deal with just the mass of all of these Bloodletters, and those Exalted Bloodletters no less. So they're just going to be able to continue to push Nurgle farther and farther away, while down on the lower fields we're going to be seeing all of these dual weapons kind of getting pulled back, getting some fresh units out on the table, as we're seeing those coming on the field right off the bat, and just holding that Exalted Great and Clean One just kind of away from everything. And so far Khorne has been playing this fight very, very well, doing exactly what you need to do. Not always as easy as it looks for Khorne, especially with all that, but it looks like, I was going to say, it looks like we had some capping coming in from Nurgle, but Khorne is able to kind of take control once again. And yeah, just not going to be Nurgle's day on this map, and Rinless is going to be taking the series 2-0. So let's take a look at the after battle report, and we'll be able to look to get into our second semifinal right after that. So Herald of Khorne not doing all too great in terms of battle, but really it was these Exalted Bloodletters which did so very, very well. 1,400, 1,300 on those guys. All of the dual weapons did some pretty good work, and the reinforcements coming in from Rinless, all these Bloodletters as well, doing some pretty decent work and having that extra speed, and they were just do work against those Exalted Plague Bears. And yeah, Plague Bears probably just a little too expensive for what you're going to be getting there. I think the regular Plague Bears would have been good to have a little wider presence and a little bit extra capping power as well against Khorne, because yeah, Khorne, they just were able to just drag everything out and keep everything away from that Exalted Great and Clean One, who only got 2,500 himself. Reinforcements for Nurgle, not a whole lot of good work on that side either. Just nothing was really able to do much at all against those Khorne forces. But that is going to be all she wrote. Rinless takes the semifinal, so let's take a look at the bracket, see how things faring. So it looks like Tim the Wilder did win his fight against Svartenbeer, so we're going to be seeing him against Dadak in our next semifinal, and I'm going to be re-hosting the lobby because we know how fickle those lobbies are. So we'll update the bracket while we're at it. Rinless advances to the final, and Tim the Wilder did take that battle, so he is now going to be on the docket for our next one. All right, so that invite is out to our contestants. We'll get our intermission here sorted out and see who joins first, and we'll get them over on the left side, just so things are pretty balanced out in game, so we know who's who. So we got Tim the Wilder coming in first. And he's going to be stretching how well we're going to be able to see his name here with the clan tags added in, but you should be able to at least tell that. And then Dadak is going to be on the other side, and we'll get the map set back over because it's going to be on the crossing of the Sea of Claws here for our first game, just like our last series. Looks good to me. All right. So we'll see what both sides have in store for us. So for picks, they are, it looks like Tim is going to be on the top of the bracket, so he will be picking first. So he will have his first two picks, and he's going to be going with Nurgle and Tzeentch for his first two. So Nurgle probably going to be a little harder on this map. This is the first map that we saw of the evening, and it is going to be pretty much struggling. So I can kind of switch the scene over to kind of show you what I'm talking about here, and we can update the scorecard so we don't go into the battle looking quite like that. But for the points, we do have that center point is going to be right where my cursor is. And then we're going to have the flanking points way up on the plains and way down in that bottom corner. And that really does put a bit of a hamper on Nurgle if Tim the Wilder does decide to go with that. Now, he definitely still can. We might have to kind of switch up his strategy just a bit. Let's see what we're going. So it looks like it is going to actually be a Tzeentch mirror because Dadak responded with Tzeentch. And Tim the Wilder is going to be going with that himself. So instead, it is going to be a ranged fest. We are going to be seeing a rave of blue and pink colors thrown across the field. So that should be a pretty exciting battle. Probably one of the more, I guess, eye-pleasing battles for mirror matches. Certain ones, Nurgle in particular, not so exciting to be watching, but it is going to be a Tzeentch mirror for this one. Hope everyone else is enjoying their Friday, I guess either their evening or Saturday early morning. Looks like we did have at least some people here that are just waking up. It's got to be the wee hours of the morning. There certainly can't be much light out for those where it can be called morning. Though I suppose we could have some people up fairly late over on the European side where it is more not quite time for, or they're just about to call it a night at like 2 a.m. or something like that. I think would be about that, 2-3 a.m. for that side of things. Yeah, just waiting on both armies to kind of get picked out by these two foes. We did see Dadak last week, and he did do very well, made it all the way to the finals, where Houseplant did end up defeating him. But yeah, again, no Houseplant in the bracket here today, giving all of the other players a chance. We didn't outright ban him from participating. He was just busy this Friday evening. But yeah, still it is going to be giving some people a chance, because I think he is still completely undefeated, at least in terms of the leaderboard on Turin's website. I'm just going to take a quick, just a peek there to see how that is looking. So yeah, he is 20-0 for tournaments being hosted, at least on Turin's website, and it has 4 tourney wins to his name. So yeah, I think a lot of the other players right now are breathing a bit of sigh of relief that he wasn't participating today, giving people a little bit of an extra chance here to kind of get a little glory for themselves. So let's see how things are. We do have Tim the Wilder is readied up, and then we'll be kind of getting in just as soon as the dock is ready, and we'll be getting ready on that side. So Torpid, just waking up at 2:30 a.m. in the UK. So definitely a little interesting sleep schedule if you're just waking up at 2:30 a.m. Definitely don't think I could get to bed early enough to say I can get up that early. And I don't think my dogs would like that schedule. Anyways, probably would get a little restless if I went to bed around 4 p.m. or something around that. Yeah, still waiting on Doc, so I have to take a peek at his army, so you guys can't see that. Just kind of see where he's sitting in terms of points. Looks like he's just kind of trying to figure out the last of his funds. As the factions now stand, you can kind of end up with some odd amounts left that kind of makes it a little difficult to get those nice even funds. You don't want to be leaving too much on the table with that reinforcement pool. So just kind of working things out for the dock side, and then we'll be getting right on into our first game of the second semifinals. Yes, Kerberos, you have some companionship with Torpid, with all of that odd sleep schedules, bringing a few of those together. But it looks like Dadok is ready, so we'll be getting into our fight here. And as soon as that scene is up, we will switch over, give you guys again a sneak peek at what we can be expecting for our first fight of this semifinal best of 3. So as for the Tzeentch side on Tim the Wilder, who is on the left side of the screen, it is going to be Forsaken, Blue Horrors, and we do have 1 unit of Pink Horrors, and then we do have that Cultist and the Herald. So the Cultist is going to be having that nice, lovely synergy with the bulk of the Tzeentch army, and I'm probably expecting to be seeing the Flaming Sword as well, giving that fire damage to those Forsaken as well, so they can benefit from Kindle Flame. But we'll see what we have on both sides. So for Blue Horrors for the Tim the Wilder, plenty of those, as we have the full kit brought out early on. 1 unit Pink Horrors, Forsaken, and that Cultist, as we did see before. He does have that Flaming Sword of Ruin, giving that fire damage, so we'll benefit from that Kindle Flame. Also has that Cascading Fire Cloak, giving that armor-piercing weapon damage, which will help them get through the opponent's Forsaken. We have the Gate of Tzeentch for a summon of Pink Horrors, adding more fuel to the fire. Kindle Flame, Wand of Whimsy as well, to give that additional melee attack and base weapon damage to boot when casting. And then, as actually we did miss 1 unit fully, that is that Herald. So Herald does have the Opal Amulet, Loka's Conjuration, Chromatic Tome, Pink Fire of Tzeentch to be using once that shield is down on your opponent forces, and then the Fires of Change. But that is going to be it on that side around. For the forces of Dadok, we are going to be seeing some Blue Horrors mixed in with a Pink Horror, some Forsaken, a couple units of Spawn. Now those Spawn going to be very, very careful here in the early stages of this fight. Going to be wanting to use that terrain to their advantage, because they are going to be up against a ton of range firepower. Herald of Tzeentch is going to be coming in with Locust, Chromatic Tome, pink fire, blue fire, as well as the fires of change and arcane conduit, of course, on his side. But yeah, those spawn, they will do very well against the enemy Forsaken, but they are going to be shot to pieces if they get into range of all of those pink horrors or blue horrors and pink horrors on the other side. So that is definitely going to be something that they need to be very cautious about in the early stages. Use that terrain to their advantage, stay out of the rather short range that the blue horrors have, and then eventually get into melee when Tzeentch doesn't have their attention fully focused on them and are starting to kind of try and drag down the rest of the units. So it looks like the forces of Tim the Wilder are going to be kind of splitting their attention between points 3 and points 2, while on Dadok's side he's going to be taking that advantage and taking point 1 and focusing most of his forces solely on point 2, only sending a token force just to keep the lower units busy, while some shots are going to be starting to be exchanged back and forth across the chasm. Blue Horrors definitely going to be having, or on Tim the Wilder's side, going to be able to get some more decent shots in because they have the superiority in terms of range numbers, at least on the early stages of this fight. So they are going to be able to kind of put that pressure on early on, and I think Tim the Wilder can put some more pressure than he is right now, considering all the damage that he can deal to these guys just with all of the superior numbers he has arrayed on this field. We do have some Furies coming in to kind of contend against the opponents who are trying to get some drops in on the range units on the far side. Forsaken coming in for Dadok, going to be looking to get some more damage done on the lower fields, as those Forsaken have caught out those blue horrors and have done some pretty decent damage so far, so these Forsaken will be trying to free up that on the lower fields, while Tim the Wilder has brought everything to kind of match off against the Dadok's Tzeentch forces, kind of forgoing that lower point at least for now and just going all in on the center point. Forsaken charging in, as is those blue horrors, going to be getting some nice decent shots off, going to be focusing down these pink horrors, exalted pink horrors nonetheless, on the first volleys, and they do break those shields and are going to be starting to do some pretty decent damage as that pink fire does kind of arc its way through, doing some nice damage to these pink horrors and breaking the shields of these blue horrors on the lower side. And we do get that Flaming Sword of Ruin, which is going to be increasing that base missile damage as well by 25%, and of course that is going to be proccing that Kindle Flame, and everything is going to be doing so much more damage on Tim the Wilder side, though that front line is going to have to be a little bit mindful, as it does take quite a bit of damage. Those Forsaken getting broken down very quickly, but those Chaos Spawn also taking quite a bit of damage. Forsaken are holding them back just long enough as these pink horrors try and just kind of tie things up on the pink horrors, but Tim the Wilder looking pretty decent so far, a little bit ahead in that damage, about 800 or so on the early volleys, but now that his front line is kind of broken down for the most part, it is going to be allowing the spawn to kind of charge in, and those Furies diving down into the blue horrors probably would have liked to kind of dive in against those spawn, kind of tie them up, but it is enough actually just to kind of pull their attention on to that side, freeing up those blue horrors to get a few more shots in with what they've got. As a lot of the forces that were here for Dadok has kind of been pulled off and kind of looking on the fringes. The blue horrors have taken point 1, and there is some presence here on point 3, but that just means that there's about, like, I don't know, 800 to 1200 value from Dadok on the far sides that aren't focused on this center point, but that is where every single unit that Tim the Wilder has is focused on. So he has been able to trade just that little bit better against Dadok's army, so he has been able to do some pretty decent work and really kind of held that front line for just long enough to get what volleys he can to really decimate what Dadok had. And those, because the spawn are pretty much on death's door, and the spawn coming in from Tim the Wilder, bringing them in as a reserve is kind of the way you want to do it, because you want to just eliminate the ranged, or at least wear out their ammunition, and that is now going to be allowing these spawn to just kind of charge forward, though they are going to be taking quite a bit of damage from that volley from these blue horrors, but they are still going to be getting some pretty decent melee value here as they push them farther and farther away from that center point. And this is now going to be allowing Tim the Wilder to now kind of stretch his wings and kind of go towards point 3, or put some pressure back up onto this top point, and that might be exactly where the spawn of Tzeentch are going to be going, with those blue horrors up on that higher field, trying to push back these blue horrors, because not a whole lot of stopping power on that side of things, and we are going to be seeing that fire, dropping down in, trying to clip the tail end of these blue horrors and pink horrors. I think you probably could have overlapped that just a little bit more with how kind of low those spawn were. Kind of just try and maximize that damage there, but the damage value for Tim the Wilder is doing very well, already getting close to 11,000, while the Doc is just breaking 7,000, so he has been trading very, very well in this fight at this point. And we kind of swing back on to the flanks as we're going to be getting a nice little charge in, though, by some Chaos Knights of Tzeentch, kind of able to sneak their way on through and kind of do a nice flanking charge into the just the reinforcements of Tim the Wilder's, or I guess the fleeing reinforcements for them, as they're going to be able to kind of break these Forsaken, break these pink horrors of Tzeentch, and do some pretty nice damage to them. So those Chaos Knights actually doing some pretty decent work on the flank there, but the center point is still pretty dominantly in control of Tim the Wilder. Like his units, like especially the Forsaken here, are sitting very low in terms of HP. These are probably some prime units to kind of teleport back, and that is exactly what he's going to be doing there, pulling one unit back, and this other unit probably would like to respond as well. Actually, pretty much all of the Forsaken here would like to kind of pull them. Actually, these are some blue horrors who have used up their ammunition, but still, it'd be very nice to get some extra funds back and bring them into the field, as both sides do have plenty in the reserves right now, so they can kind of bring out a little influx of those fields. These Screamers are going to be kind of charging forth into these Chaos Furies. Now, the Chaos Furies are pretty low in health, so they're going to be disintegrating pretty quickly on. Now, normally, Chaos Furies will trade exceptionally well against Screamers. The Screamers just don't get any of their benefits against the Furies, but with how low those Furies were, it did not matter for those Screamers, and they're going to be able to eliminate that air presence on that side of things. The Herald of Tzeentch for Tim the Wilder does end up diving into melee, probably not seeing that he's completely used up its ammunition, and now he is in a rather tough spot right now. Screamers kind of pin him in place, and he takes a blue cast or blue fire straight to the face, taking a bunch of damage as these pink horrors are going to be firing point blank range into the caster. But we still have the Cultist for Tim the Wilder, so even if he does lose the Herald, it is not the worst thing in the world, so he doesn't want to be suffering the penalties associated with that loss. And kind of taking a look at the rest of it, actually we're going to zoom back in as we do see a little bit of fire coming down. Actually, we just missed that by the looks of things. And then on the flanks, those spawn have been able to push back those blue horrors, and now Tim the Wilder will slowly be capping that point in his favor, and that is going to give him in command of 2 of the points. Now, he is actually down still in terms of the total points on the day, as these blue horrors still hold 0.3 for Tzeentch, or for the Doc's Tzeentch. It can be a little bit confusing here. Nice blue pink fire going in against Tim the Wilder, as it is going to be able to break these blue horrors here, getting a few more of the infantry presence off the field. And now we are going to be actually seeing the Doc starting to take control of that second point, has been able to kind of drag things back ever so slightly. He was pretty far down. He has probably pulled back at about 1,000 to 2,000 points from the early battle, so he is not out of the battle just yet. He still has plenty of tools left, and these Chaos Knights have done some pretty decent work in the backfield, getting some nice charges in there, and he is slowly capping that. Actually, as I say that, that is going to be switching back into Tim the Wilder's advantage, and he is going to be taking control of that second point. He never did lose it, but he's going to be pulling that back into his favor as he does get some more units on to this point, and is going to be kind of pushing back what the Doc did have. And now that these Chaos Knights are actually kind of pretty isolated right now, these Screamers are going to be doing some pretty decent work against them. The Screamers are going to be taking some fire from the Exalted Pink Horrors, but they are going to be able to get some pretty decent damage, but down they will eventually fall. And that is going to be at least freeing up those Chaos Knights to have a little bit of freedom to kind of pull back, and I think they definitely need to do that. The Doc needs to kind of regroup his forces, though he's kind of pulling in some blue horrors, so that should kind of help with that. Some Forsaken as well, kind of diving in to assist them, while the Chaos Knights can be turning their attention to the reinforcing units, Forsaken and these blue horrors in particular, just kind of holding them back, and again, just putting some additional pressure. Actually, this is the Doc's Herald of Tzeentch, who is now kind of getting himself into a little bit of a bad position, and those Chaos Knights are definitely going to need to kind of charge in and get some assistance there. Pink fire goes right through these Forsaken, not quite able to break through their shield, so no damage really done to them, and they are just slowly chipping away at the Doc's Lord here, and the Doc really cannot afford to lose his Lord, because with him gone, that is going to be pretty much it for trying to get army abilities for his side, because he only has that single caster unless he has one in the reserves, while Tim the Wilder did come in with 2 off the get-go, so he has plenty of sources for that Winds of Magic on that side. Blue Horse now trying to look to take some pressure onto that point 1 on the top side, while Tim the Wilder is going to be responding in kind, sending some blue horrors off into that direction as those Chaos Furies looking to kind of just finish off these Screamers, keeping them away from that Herald, and then putting again that pressure back onto that point 1 on that side of things. But in their absence, Dadak has been able to kind of push back into the center point and is going to be starting to slowly cap that back away from Tim the Wilder. So he does have some chance to kind of pull things back, but Tim the Wilder has taken the advantage in terms of total points. So he is in the lead kind of coming into the late stage of this match. But with that loss of that second point, which looks like it is going to be going towards the Doc, that is going to be kind of pushing that advantage back onto his side, and that damage value is kind of narrowing down bit by bit, now down to only about 1,500. At its highest, I believe that was about 4k in total, and the Doc just continues to throw units into the second point. Now he just needs to cap this to start things off, because once that's capped, he can kind of take a little bit of a breather, kind of pull things back, get some ranged shots in. But he needs that point first and foremost, and it does look like he is going to be able to take that, and it is now in his possession, and he's going to be able to kind of swinging points back into his favor, and especially with the kind of pressure kind of coming in on this point, it has been able to pull 2 units of Blue Horrors here with a single unit of Blue Horror, so that unit is just going to be tying down double its own value. So that is actually a pretty nice play there. And then on the far side, that unit is still well just kind of holding that far point, and Tim the Wilder might need to kind of throw some units off onto that far side, because he is now going to be kind of put on the just the time clock here, because he needs to take another point back at some point. And he's had to invest quite a few units just kind of keeping things on the flanks, and those Chaos Knights from Dadoxan have really kind of been kind of those unsung heroes, just kind of sweeping in with their mobility on just outside of the points. But as I said that, now Tim the Wilder does have just enough capture weight to start bringing points back into his favor, but he is going to be foregoing most of that and putting most of that pressure onto that far point. These Blue Horrors are going to be falling back to just kind of delay these Forsaken for as long as they can with those Blue Horrors as well. And we do get some reinforcements coming in. Those Spawn are actually probably be particularly gruesome against those Forsaken, so that is going to be putting some pressure on Tim the Wilder. So he's going to be thinking again on that and kind of focusing more back onto point 2, but he is running out of time. Dadak has taken the advantage here in the point with only 1,000 left to go, and now only 500 damage separates the two armies. So he has done really good work in the latter stages of this fight in clawing this game back bit by bit, and Tim the Wilder maybe grew a little bit complacent here, because I'm not seeing the pressure that he needs to kind of push back the units of Dadoxan from these points, because at this point he had kind of forego that push into point 3, though it did kind of get those Spawn at least over on that side. But now those Spawn are going to be kind of closing that back door against the Forsaken, kind of charging in, though it looks like Dadak is going to be losing his Lord, as that Herald of Tzeentch is pretty much going to be succumbing to all of that pressure up in the sky. It is now finally going to be unstable, and that is going to be it for the Lord. But Tim is slowly taking point 2, but I think we might just be in that triple cap territory with only 400 points left for Dadak to kind of take things back. Far point isn't going to be contested anytime soon, and at this point, and Dadak is realizing this, he's sending those Blue Horrors to point 3, falling back with his Spawn and his Forsaken. Everything is falling back to that third point. Tim the Wilder has taken that second point, but only 300 points, and he needs 700, so there is not enough time left on the clock for him to sit and only hold 2 points. He needs to take point 3, and especially with the Spawn Forsaken, all these units and plenty of flyers to keep things at bay, I think Dadak's got this. There is no way for Tim to take point 3 in time for victory to be his. And yeah, Dadak is going to be taking this first point the first game by the looks of it. Only about 1,500 points or 150 points left for Dadak, as all of these Furies just diving in, trying to just eliminate as many of the Blue Horrors. But Dadak responds with his own Fury, so it is just a massive just wings and crazy things on point 3, as he's just throwing things to delay Tim the Wilder from getting in. And yeah, there's just not enough time left to take this point. Even if all of these units were on point 3 right now, he could not cap it in time. And that is going to be game 1 going towards Dadak. A very well fought battle, dragged his way back from a very shaky opening stage. But yeah, Dadak wins game 1. Very well fought indeed. So let's take a look at the after battle report. We'll update the scorecard as well, giving him that first point. And as soon as it does kind of shift over, yeah, we'll take a look at how things did. So the Cultist of Tzeentch not getting a whole lot of damage, but mostly there for the Kindle Flame. Herald of Tzeentch not getting a whole lot, but it only had that pink fire for Tim the Wilder side. Forsaken did do very, very well. 1,500, 1,100, so lots of damage from those guys. Pink Horrors getting 700, and then the Blue Horrors generating some really good value. I mean, these guys got 1924. That is insane for a 400 costing unit. Most likely was done to a lot of the spawn for that damage. For the reserves, spawn on his hand did not do all too well, as did those Screamers. So really kind of the reserves kind of struggled a bit, except for those Chaos Furies. Those Chaos Furies getting 800, 1,500, and 1,000. So it's just a ton of value. Just bringing so many units in through that fight. So a lot of damage even on that side. As for Dadak's side, Herald does a little bit better. Exalted Pink Horse not quite doing what the costed for. And then the rest of the units kind of coming in, both of these. Forsaken doing really well. The Furies getting 1,500 on their side. So just pretty much every unit on both sides just did very, very well. And here are those Chaos Knights. And really, those guys, they got 1,600 in damage value, but they did so much work on that back line, holding Tim the Wilder at bay, away from those points for just long enough. So these guys really did really well. And yeah, just Tim just didn't have the mobility to kind of counteract them at all. The only thing he did have was those Screamers, and it just was not enough on that side. But that is it for our first game for this best of 3. Let's switch on back over, get the map updated for these guys, and then we'll kind of get into our next one, as it is going to be Arnheim once again. So that was a very well played battle there on both sides, or especially on Dadak's side, be able to drag things back from the brink there. So let's see, what do we have? So Dadak, for his picks, is actually going to be going with Khorne and Cathay for his picks on Arnheim. Unfortunately, though, we're not going to be seeing Cathay, as Tim Wilder goes with Nurgle, and we're going to be seeing Khorne from Dadak's side. So again, this matchup continues to show its face in this tournament again and again and again. But yes, yeah, the duel of the uncooked nuggets is over, Kerberos. That was actually a pretty exciting match overall, at least in terms of maybe a higher level strategy wise. It was just a lot of blue and pink bolts going left, right, and center, but still, yeah, pretty entertaining. So yeah, for this next matchup, as I just mentioned, it is going to be Nurgle versus Khorne. Tim the Wilder has Nurgle and Dadak has Khorne. Tim the Wilder is ready to go right off the get-go, having a build set, especially on this map here, though we did see Khorne kind of put on a clinic in this matchup in our last semifinal game. We'll see if Tim the Wilder is going to be able to kind of play that matchup a little better, or see if Dadak's going to be able to kind of play up to that Khorne level, because Khorne played it very, very well the last time we saw this fight on that last semifinal. So yeah, again, kind of just the game plan for this matchup with Nurgle and Khorne. Khorne really needs to avoid the Exalted Great Unclean One at all costs. Pretty much just engaging with things to just tie it down, keep it away from multiple units, because as soon as that thing gets into melee, when you have more than really 2 units next to it, that thing's just going to be getting so much value so very quickly. So as they're loading in, we'll take a little looky, see how things are going. So Exalted Great Unclean One here for Tim the Wilder. We do also see a Soul Grinder as well. Now they can do rather well in the Khorne matchup, because they are kind of a mortar unit, but they really do struggle in melee. So it kind of goes against the Nurgle strategy in general. We do have 2 cultists. We have Spawn, 2 Plague Bearers as well. But yeah, that Soul Grinder just kind of goes against Nurgle's overall strategy. We'll see if it works out here. Otherwise, the Exalted Great Unclean One coming in with Blight Swarm, Stream of Corruption, Fleshy Abundance, as well as Cloud of Flies, Voted Stench, and then of course he has that Pestilent Decay with the Arcane Conduit. So really standard stuff on his side around. We did see those cultists. We'll see if they have any additional items other than their summons, and it does look like it's just going to be the Gate and the Cloud of Flies, and one does have that icon of Eternal Violence. You really only need one of them to have that ability. As for the Khorne side of things, they are going to be actually splitting their load a little bit here, as Exalted Bloodletters, 2 units of those to spawn on the top lane, and that is a formidable presence, but they do not want to go up against that Exalted Great Unclean One with those units at all. On the lower field, we do have Cultist Khorne, we have some Blood Crushers with their bonus versus infantry, some Chaos Warriors, and of course that Herald of Khorne, who is on his Juggernaut as well, so he does have that Locus of Wrath, and he has that Revel in Slaughter for his items. So I think for that initial lineup, you kind of have to expect Nurgle to take point 3, so as Khorne, putting too many funds up against them is probably a bit of a mistake. Just seeing all of these funds, and I think Dadak is kind of seeing this, and you're going to be seeing these Exalted Bloodletters now kind of retreating back, and I think they're going to be kind of pulling back down towards point 1 because they really are kind of be a little bit pressured to try and make it through that gap on point 3 without getting caught out by all of the rest of it, and then it is a very long route to try and get around it. But yeah, at the time being, Nurgle definitely has all of their eggs in that top basket here, so it's going to be really fun to see all of that. Yeah, and Kerberos, it's also hard when both factions are the same, so it's very hard with mirror matches to tell who is who when everything looks exactly the same and is doing the exact same things. But otherwise, we are going to be seeing some we're going to be seeing a Beast of Nurgle can be coming in for the reinforcement pool on their side, and that is pretty much all of the new reinforcements on that. Dadak has plenty of units, and I think, well, it looks like he's changed up his strategy a little bit because we did see that Herald of Khorne. I know on last week we did see him kind of holding Scarbrand in reserve, but he can't be bringing Scarbrand with that Herald, so we'll be seeing what we are bringing. He does bring in some units. Looks like it might be just some Chaos Warriors with Halberds, and those Bloodletters are kind of coming in down from that top as they're going to be circling around to take point 1. But there's still quite a few funds here up on the top field, and even though the spawn have reduced unit counts at 16, it is still going to be taking pretty much max, or I think it does take exactly max damage from that Exalted Great Unclean One. You only need a unit to have like 3 total models to actually be completely affected by that Mortis engine. And Nurgle just continuing to push forward with all of their Plague Bears, going to be getting a very strong anchor into this top point in the early stages, and Khorne does kind of take those far points. Taking point 2 and point 1 and 3 is pretty much going to be the only 2 points contested. We might see some like Plague Toads or something try and take point 2 away if those Chaos Warriors do kind of come off of that point, but for now that's 750 just value just kind of sitting off to the side, and Nurgle is going to be happy keeping them at bay, and they just don't have the speed to kind of counteract that anyways. But the Soul Grinder is just going to be kind of firing away, but it looks like the Bloodletters and all of the spawn are just kind of sitting nice and tight, so I'm not sure exactly what all that ammunition has been used on so far. Doesn't look like it's gotten any value up until this point, and Nurgle is going to start putting some pressure down pretty heavily on point 1, and there's not much down here for Khorne to really put up much of a fight early on. The Blood Crushers are going to be kind of deterring any reinforcements from coming in, but everything's just going to be streaming their way down to point 3 and then down to point 1 once they have the options to do that. So it actually looks like those Halberds are taking the shots in from that Soul Grinder, doing some okay damage, but again, probably not quite worth it on that side. The Plague or the Nurgle forces have taken point 3, and then point 1 and 2 will quickly be under control of the Nurgle forces. Hey, Alex McCabe, welcome to the stream, just in time for our second semifinal at the midway stage. So this is the second game of that, so only about halfway through all of the games for today. Soul Grinder continuing to fire away at these Halberds down on the lower fields, having used up half its ammunition and only doing a quarter damage against those Halberds, and it's kind of just really showing just Soul Grinders and not the way to go. So yeah, we have seen 3 games before this. So the first series was a 2-0, and this is the second game of the second semifinal. So not missing too much up until this point. They're going to get a nice Stream of Corruption. Now, the Stream of Corruption probably much better casted on the Chaos Warriors than on to those Exalted Bloodletters, or even just Bloodletters in general. I do believe Bloodletters do have that magic resist, so it's just not going to be doing quite as much damage to them over the regular warrior variant. But Nurgle sitting pretty strong with what they have. They've actually been able to really split the Khorne forces to a point that they're actually probably fairly manageable with what Khorne has up on the top field. Having, I think, one of the spawn definitely needed to kind of pull back down, because the Exalted Bloodletters and that one spawn duo can pretty much handle the Plague Bearers and that spawn, but that other one is going to be kind of sitting by its lonesome, not having that infantry support, so it needs to dive in with the rest of the Bloodletters who are charging in, and especially once we have that summon from that cultist up on top, going to be doing a bunch more damage. And now the Exalted Great Unclean One is engaged with melee on the lower field. It's going to be doing quite a bit of damage to those Exalted Great Unclean Ones and those spawn, who are now rampage themselves, getting some more summons in. Is going to be holding everything into this engagement. And these Chaos Warriors of Khorne would love to help assist these guys, but if they get too close, they're just going to be starting to get drained again by that Exalted Great Unclean One. And Nurgle, or Khorne, is kind of falling into that trap that Nurgle would love for them to fall into, but they are going to be losing their Soul Grinder. And probably the only real big mistake so far for Nurgle is even bringing that Soul Grinder, who has gotten very little value. I mean, we can take a quick look to see. Oh, well, I guess 1,000 value. Not terrible, but not great for what it's got. As it is going to be falling, and now that Herald of Khorne is going to be able to turn its attention to that Exalted Great Unclean One, but again, just slowly dragging things out, and that Stream of Corruption going through those Chaos Warriors, doing a nice, decent amount of damage, but again, with those spells, you kind of want to start them a little farther away from that unit. But in the center engagement, those Blood Crushers do charge in, but that is just adding fuel to the fire that is that Exalted Great Unclean One, and his damage value is just going to be slowly ticking on up ever so slightly as it needs to just get engaged in melee, kind of dealing with everything that was around it, but is charging for it. And now Khorne, this is the response that you needed to have a little early on, so those dual weapons are pulling back from that engagement, staying away from that Exalted Great Unclean One. That is exactly what they need to do. They need to just try and just drag that Exalted Great Unclean One around the battlefield. But if we look at the top field, we're seeing that Nurgle has things pretty much well under control. The Exalted Bloodletters and those spawn getting handled pretty easily by the Plague Toad spawn and all the Plague Bearers, just dragging them down through the mud, and these spawn as well. Again, without that infantry support, spawn not necessarily the best unit. We are actually seeing some Minotaurs of Khorne now kind of diving in. Now these guys have that bonus versus large. You'll be trying to probably use their mass and that bonus to try and deal with that Exalted Great Unclean One, but that Exalted Great Unclean One has taken like 0 damage up until this point and has generated already about 500 value in that short time that we kind of looked away. So he's doing some pretty decent work here, just wallowing in the mud and loving to bring Khorne down to his level. As the cultist, that herald, all of that is just getting dragged ever so slowly down, and are losing their ability to kind of deal with that Exalted Great Unclean One, because the cultist and that herald in combo can actually do some pretty decent work, but they need to isolate that Exalted Great Unclean One. They can't just dive in when he is surrounded by his own single entities, by his own spawn, so they are just getting beat down and are going to be losing both of those units. So Khorne is not looking all too hot here, though the damage is still fairly close, though Nurgle usually isn't supposed to be ahead in the damage value, considering most of the damage gets replenished with their healing. So if they're ahead, things are looking rather grim for Khorne indeed. Though Khorne still has the advantage in terms of total points, though Nurgle is slowly starting to take point 1, but they are kind of pulling away from point 2, which is going to open up that back door a bit for Nurgle if they kind of want to start throwing some units there, because Khorne just doesn't have the speed to quickly respond. The engagements that Khorne's getting right here isn't necessarily the absolutely worst, though they are dealing with a lot of large units. So you have spawn 2 units of Plague Toads here, and not a whole lot of units that can really deal with it. The Minotaurs do some decent work here, but spawn generally are preferred, but at least it is away from the Exalted Great Unclean One. who is just kind of slowly dragging things down. And again, he is at full health still, going with a full head of steam. So Fleshhound's going to be getting a decent charge into the rear, trying to just whittle down these Plague Bears and just trying to isolate that Exalted Great and Clean One. But time is kind of ticking a little bit for Nurgle. Tim the Wilder is kind of sitting a little bit in that danger zone in terms of points, because this is a domination match. So you still need to get 5,000 points to win the day. Doesn't matter how well you do in terms of that melee fight. And the Exalted Great and Clean One is slowly, very, very slowly taking that point 1. Those Fleshhounds did try and dive in to kind of slow that down, though we are seeing the Fleshhounds kind of start pulling away, so we might be seeing, actually we are definitely seeing exactly that. So these Nurglings are going to be making a beeline for that point 2, and it's just going to be drawing the attention of more of the Khorne forces, forcing them off onto that side. And we're actually seeing a resurgence of the Soul Grinder. I kind of thought that was a mistake to bring one, but here is the second Soul Grinder of the day, going to be kind of coming in for this fight. I'm not expecting to see a second one after kind of the rather lackluster performance of that first one, but it is back again, and it is going to be wallowing in that melee fight with the Spawn and these Exalted Bloodletters, who are putting some decent pressure onto that top point and are going to be starting to take that point 3. So this is going to be where Nurgle is going to be struggling, is with their mobility. So they have been able to take that center point and are going to be starting to take those points slowly back into their favor, but they have a long way to go, and Khorne has been able to peel off these Nurglings who try to take point 2, and point 3 is slowly falling towards the Khorne forces. These Exalted Bloodletters have done really good work at dealing with these Plague Bears, and that Soul Grinder just doesn't have the capture power to hold things back, though Nurgle is charging up the field with all of their Plague Toads, trying to get some capture power on, as we do have those Minotaurs and those Exalted Bloodletters charging up the hill, but they are dragging that Exalted Great Unclean One onto that point ever so slowly. Gets a little stuck up on that rock here, but he is exactly what the Khorne forces did not want to see. But Nurgle brings enough forces to the table to hold point 3 and start bringing it back into their favor. So Khorne was very close to taking that point, and had they taken that point, that would have been actually pretty disastrous for Nurgle, because they absolutely cannot afford to be bouncing between too many points here at this stage of the fight. But we do see those Exalted Bloodletters, they're going to be charging in themselves, getting their own cap weight, who is now kind of switched back towards Khorne's favor, as they've been dealing with these Plague Toads pretty easily. Plague Toads, they have the cap weight, but they just don't have the staying power that much of the other Nurgle forces have, and that Exalted Great and Clean One just can't seem to decide which direction it wants to go. It needs to get onto one of these points, and honestly at this point needs to probably be on point 3 and just kind of try and throw things into point 1, but Khorne is starting to put some pressure on that lower point as well. These Chaos Warriors with dual weapons shouldn't have a problem in dealing with these Spawn and these Plague Bears on that lower field, so they might very well be able to start taking point 1, and these dogs are just holding back all of these Nurglings. Nurglings are just trying to steam their way into point 2, and Khorne is responding with a few units of themselves, but they are just trying to use whatever numbers they can, cheap units that have the capping weight, and they are going to be able to take point 2. So that is a nice little bit of a breather. Now they have, well, I was going to say they had 3 points, but Khorne is able to take that top point. And do they have enough? They are down to only 500 points to go, while the other side has 1,500, so I think Khorne, they just need to hold 1 point, be wherever it is, and Khorne can win the day with points, despite the fact that Nurgle has been really having the advantage in terms of the engagements. That Exalted Great and Clean One has done really good work so far, but it does not matter if they are not able to generate the points that they need, and they are going to need to throw everything that they can, and we are seeing exactly that. So we see Plague Toads, Plague Bears, everything is steaming their way forward. That Soul Grinder is actually pulling his way back to get some shots in when he can, and even just trying to pull these Exalted Bloodletters kind of a little bit out of position, but they just need to get onto that point 3 if they're going to be able to pull things back, as there's enough pressure on the lower field, so they can't just throw everything that they can. They need some things kind of going to the other points, and I think too many units is actually on the lower fields. They needed to pretty much throw everything they had into this top point, because they do not have the points to take just to hold 2 points. They need all 3 at this time frame. And these dogs, these spawn, those things should actually be able to hold things back. And I think the Doc is going to do it again, despite the fact that getting kind of out-traded in terms of damage. He's just been playing very well strategy-wise in terms of the domination mode. And yeah, it looks like he is going to be winning the day again. There is just not enough time for Nurgle to take point 3. Even again, if they had everything on the point right now, it would not be in time. And Khorne is going to be winning the day. So Dadak is going to be taking game 2. And that is going to be putting him into the finals once again to face off against our other contestant, playing very well in these 2 fights. So we'll take a look at the after battle report. Dadak does win, moving forward into the finals. So 2 series so far have been 2-0. Some very good games, though, especially in this series here. Dadak has just played it so very, very remarkably well. But yeah, you've seen that Exalted Great Unclean One getting 42-35. Tons of value. Does not matter if he can't cap those points in time. Soul Grinder did have 2 summons, so you got to remember that. It did find its way onto the field twice, getting 2,200 there. But fun seeing it. I just don't think it was worth bringing it to this fight. Nurgle just needs that capping power wherever they can. The spawn did okay work. Rest of the units from Nurgle, Exalted Plague Bearers did some okay work. Spawn again doing some pretty decent stuff. Rest of the units, Plague Toads, so not completely one-sided in terms of damage, being just all centered on that Exalted Great Unclean One. As for Khorne side, they had a little shaky performance early on, especially with like the Herald and the Cultist. They kind of got taken out of the fight pretty early, but they were able to kind of pull things out. So just kind of taking a look, these Blood Crushers doing really good work, 2,400 on them. Exalted Bloodletters as well, seeing more and more of those in this matchup with the Plague Bearers being so prevalent here. Spawn doing really good work as well. And then that's kind of the plays in the late game with these Fleshhounds able to just delay Nurgle for as long as they could on those lower points and just allowed them to get the points that they needed to win the day. I mean, these Exalted Bloodletters getting 2,200, even the Minotaurs as well getting almost 1,700. So that was very well played on Dadak's side. He played it. It looked a little shaky to start, but then he really got things together and played that really well mid to late game and did come out on top. So let's switch back to the intermission, and actually we are going to be getting into the final bracket as well, so we'll update that. So Dadak does move forward. So it's Dadak versus Rinless here in our next one. So well played, and I'm just letting our contestants know I will be re-hosting the lobby. Just to avoid any of that desync stuff that we have been seeing time and time again in the lobby. So we'll switch back to the intermission, and then we'll update our players here with where they're going to be in the lobby. Get that lobby up. Get our players in. And then for the maps for today, for the best of 5 finals, it is going to be Broken Leg Gully, Crossing of the Sea of Claws, Arnheim, Battle for Itza, and Death Pass will wrap things up for that. So looking pretty good for those maps. I'll update the maps in the lobby so both sides do know what we're going to be going up against. So they kind of get a feel for the maps. We have Rinless in the lobby, just waiting on Dadak. So we can update our little scorecard here so it reflects who's on what side. Update the score as well, as this is the first game of the best of 5 series. And we are going to be getting a new winner for the, well, obviously a new winner for the NA tournament on these Friday evenings. As so far it has been Houseplant and Platypus, I think, has won every single one so far. So also this is going to be the first time that we're not going to be seeing RT gate tags as well. So it's going to be some new faces. Good to see that. So yeah, we're just going to be waiting on picks here. I know Rinless had to step out for just a second, but we'll be getting that underway pretty quick. And then while we're waiting, we can kind of take a look, just make sure everything's looking good. And then also the map as well. So Broken Leg Gully is going to be the first one. So it is going to be a fairly open map in general, but you do have those points on the two cliff sides with one in the center. So we'll see what sides are going to be going with their picks. Doc does have his first pick, so he can go first for that. So I'll let him know. What we'll be seeing from him. So he's thinking on those. And this is, even being a best of 5, it is still going to be the pick 2 and then pick from your remaining pool. So nothing's changing in the picks and bans for that. We have yet to get to a rubber match, so we don't have those picks and bans at this stage of the series. Let the players know the map pool so they have it in the Discord. And then we should be getting away because Doc is going to be going with Nurgle and Tzeentch for his first 2 picks. Some pretty decent ones, and this map does again favor Nurgle a little bit with just the proximity of the capture points. They do have 2 of them which are pretty close enough, and one being so close to your own spawn, it just definitely helps Nurgle a bit more in that regard, so they can really focus pretty heavily on that center point, and it does make other factions really kind of struggle to get them off of it. Though with Nurgle and Tzeentch, ogres might see a presence here. They definitely have plenty of avenues for some of their longer range guns to get some shots in. Otherwise, Khorne has been a favored pick here as well. I mean, it's fairly decent against both matchups, but again, against Nurgle, it is going to struggle a little bit for that. So we'll see if Rinless, what he decides to kind of go with for his selection. But if you did miss that opening series with Rinless, he did play very well in those series. He actually had some pretty convincing matches. It definitely was not nearly as close as our 2 games from our last series, and you couldn't really get much closer than that. Doc just played very, very well in terms of points. Still waiting, though, on Rinless's decision for his own selection. But we should be getting into our first game fairly soon. I just realized we were still on that scene, so I get a little bit of background going on while we wait for them. I think I didn't decide to take a little peek at any armies that were getting built there. And Rinless is going to be going with Kislev, though. That is going to be the first time we've seen Kislev, at least today, I think. I don't even know if we saw them at all in last week, or maybe even the week before that. It's definitely not been a fairly common pick up until this point, but it is good to be seeing them here in this fight. Definitely have some decent tools to deal with both, and just kind of the mobility against the Nurgle side and the ranged will help. I think Doc has not made his selection just yet, and he is going to be going with Tzeentch, so it's Kislev versus Tzeentch here. I definitely think we're going to be seeing some chariots from the Kislev side to kind of help punch through the formation of Tzeentch and kind of just disrupt that back line for as much as they can. Also probably expect to see some more heavy armor from the Kislev side. Tzeentch generally struggles to deal with that, especially when they can kind of anything that can deal with it, like Spawn, for instance, Spawn Forsaken, is going to get kind of shot to pieces a bit by a lot of the Kislev ranged units, and they would struggle against the chariots in general. But a lot of the spells on Kislev size doesn't necessarily stand up to what Tzeentch has. The Winds of Winter can only really work if you can just get Tzeentch sucked in to like your chariots, for example, and you kind of have to hope that they didn't go as super wide. But we'll kind of see what both sides have in store for us. Both sides still selecting their armies, so not nearly as readied up as some of our last series are, but we should be getting underway again pretty soon. Welcome again to the finals for those who just kind of popped on in. Been some good fights so far. Hopefully everyone is enjoying their Friday evening, watching some Warhammer, or I guess Saturday morning, as I know a couple of you are with your crazy, ridiculous sleep schedules. And I guess as they wait as well, that would be a good chance to just take a little peek at the dogs, so I will be right back, because neither side is ready just yet. Well, they were nice and relaxed, as I was hoping they'd be this evening. Rinless is set. Now we're just waiting on to dock, and we should be getting underway with our finals. So both sides are now ready to go. So we'll load on in. As soon as that pops up, we can take a little sneak peek preview at what both sides are going to be bringing. So for Kislev side, we have an Ice Witch. Bringing in with ice, have a Patriarch in support, 2 Zargard with that heavy armor, and that shield is what I was kind of expecting to see. Corsairs with some spears to help kind of keep things at base. More Corsairs, so lots of ranged on that side, so they're looking to be kind of out shooting. So the screen blocker, I don't just have it for some nice, decent background. Nothing to really block with how the lobby is set up now. But I've been using them for quite a while, so just kind of continue to use them. Just a little visual to have. So for the Kislev side of things, being led by Rinless, of course we do have that Ice Witch that I mentioned before, and for the spells we have Guardian's Call, not really a spell, but summoning a unit of Snow Leopards. Snowflake Pendant, we have the Heart of Winter as the only spell here for Kislev, just kind of be trying to get as much just damage with that single one, and Arcane Conduit for that, and Iron Ice Armor as well, which kind of reducing speed and melee attack in an AoE around her. She is on horseback for some nice mobility. Patriarch is going to be there for assistance. Celiac's Lullaby as well as Tor's Battle Hymn are going to be there for some nice buffs and healing. And we do also have the Courage of Sacrifice, the I'm never going to pronounce this right, Balalaikai of the Arari, Daz Brazier, and then that is going to be it on that side. Again, we saw the lineup. As for the Tzeentch side, have a little bit of time to kind of take a look at them before the armies do end up clashing. Blue Horror is going to be sitting up in the front with some Forsaken thrown in as well, and there's going to be plenty of these spawn going to be kind of thrown in, 3 units of those in total, a couple more Forsaken there to help assist that front line. So they're going to be wanting to get into that back line as quickly as they can, because they will do a number on those spawn, all of those Corsairs. Definitely what they want to be targeting early on. Herald the Tzeentch is going to be rolling in with Locust, Chromatic Tome, Pink Fire, Blue Fire, and then we also do have the Arcane Conduit, and that is going to be it for the Lord and the armies, and both sides going to be kind of coming in. We do have some summons, as we're going to be seeing some more Zargard coming in from Kislev, and they are just going heavy with the infantry, so they are going to be taking that front flanks with that heavy armor, and they're just going to be trying to plug the gaps, not allowing Tzeentch to really kind of get around them. And these guys have 100 or 90 armor, silver shields, and so they're just going to hold and hold and hold. Tzeentch is going to have a very strong, hard time kind of pushing through them, and all of these Corsairs with their ranged attacks are just going to be able to just pepper in to those spawn and even the Forsaken after that, and do some pretty decent damage there. But they are focusing entirely, or almost entirely, on that second point there. Tzeentch should put a little bit of pressure onto that top point, but a couple units of Corsairs are going to have a thing or two to say about that, and that is the point closest to Kislev's side of things. So Tzeentch is going to have a little bit of a hard time kind of pushing into that second point. They're just going to have just so many units to get through, but they are going to be getting some units off to the sides and trying to get some flanking maneuvers off onto them, but they're just going to have to be a little bit patient with that. Do not want to be charging in too early, but we are going to be seeing some Kislev heavy war sleds coming in onto the side, and they're going to be getting a nice charge into those Forsaken if those Forsaken do not respond in time. And those shots alone just right down the line going to be almost taking down their shield right off the get-go, and a nice pink fire though, taking half health off of these Corsairs, doing just some chip damage to the Zargard, but really doing some pretty decent work to those Corsairs, and they are going to be kind of whittling them down ever so slightly, bit by bit. Some Coast Fight Dervishes going to be off on to that flank, just kind of keeping things at bay on that side, while the heavy war sleds just going to be pretty much getting in free shots at this point, and are going to be starting to do some pretty decent damage against the Forsaken on the early stages here. But these blue horrors are going to be trying to push forward and just kind of be trying to waste some shots from these heavy war sleds and just get whatever damage they can. But the spawn, on the other hand, probably not going to be wanting to get too close, but the heavy war sleds going to be trying to target that Herald of Tzeentch. Probably wants to be getting some more damage on things that is going to generate some value. And the spawn, though, looks like they might get a nice, decent side charge off holding these guys up. Their shield does pop in the process, but they are going to be keeping these guys at bay, and is now going to be allowing the shots to start raining in. And these heavy war sleds do not want to be here for any longer than they have to. Try to go down the hill, but those spawn had a thing or two to say about that. Now center ranks, those spawn are going to be engaging with Zargard. They definitely need that infantry support as quickly as can. Heart of Winter went down a little early on, tried to catch out some units. Looks like it only is catching these blue horrors. So these other two units are still outside that range. So that's a lot of Winds of Magic to be casting for not a whole lot of value gained in return. And speaking of value, these spawn are just given that Ice Witch the business, as she has taken a ton of damage so far as they are just wailing on her. She is trying to pull herself out of there, but I don't think that she's going to be able to get out with and just kind of stay alive for very long, because now that Herald of Tzeentch is going to be having a target on her, or putting a target on that Ice Witch's back, and should be able to eliminate the spell casting pretty early on. It just needs to fly on over there and finish things off. Spawn did take a mighty amount of damage in the process of doing that, though. Another blue fire kind of rips through these Corsairs, do some pretty much decent damage on top of that. But all of these Corsairs have some nice setup to just kind of get some nice range damage in. And so far, things pretty even in terms of value. Even Tzeentch a little bit on top of things. Nice charge by the Forsaken into these Corsairs, trying to put some pressure on that rear line as these heavy war sleds now doing some nice decent damage, getting some shots in. Probably need to start charging through that center ranks, as that Ice Witch is going to be pulling back, trying to get away from that Herald of Tzeentch if at all possible, as he does have that Locust Conjuration, getting a little bit more Winds of Magic back. We do have an Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch in that center ranks, and he's going to be doing some massive work against these Zargard. Flamer is an excellent choice here to deal with those heavy armor units, and it has some pretty decent protection right now. Kislev just can't get the range, especially with the increased range that the Exalted Flamer got. It is not going to be under too much of a threat, but that Patriarch is trying to come in and put some pressure on it, as it is going to be getting caught out a little bit by the blue horrors, and these heavy war sleds now charging through those lines of the Tzeentch forces, and are now going to be starting to wreak havoc amongst the rest of the units. And is exactly what that thing needs to be doing, is causing that chaos, keeping all of the range units of Tzeentch from getting those decent shots off. And things are starting to look a little bit better for Kislev here, even if that damage is still in Tzeentch's favor. We do have some Chaos Knights going to be charged in on the top field, charge right into some Corsairs, do very nice damage to them, taking exceptionally little in return, especially with his Forsaken as well. So this push here on the top flank is doing some pretty good work here. We do have a unit here. There's a Snow Leopard hiding in the glare of the snow as it does charge forward. We'll do some decent work against the Chaos Knights, but it is so glass cannony, it is not going to be doing a whole lot. A point-blank shot from the Herald of Tzeentch with that blue fire is going to be taking out one of the heavy war sleds, and that is going to be kind of getting these guys stuck in and slowly dragging them down as them shots rain in. These guys need to continue just to cycle in, but they've done some pretty good work so far in this fight, and Kislev just has a very strong presence here on point 2, getting some nice ranges. Forsaken getting a little forgotten, taking some mighty shots from all of those Cossars. And then if we go back up to the top flank here, the rest of the forces with the Forsaken doing some decent work against the Corsairs. And I'm sorry for blinding everyone with getting too close to that field there, but we're trying to see what's going on. The Chaos Knights are starting to take some damage from that Snow Leopard. Snow Leopard does have that bonus versus large, so it is going to be doing some pretty decent work. And I did actually expect the Chaos Knights to deal with it a little bit quicker, but yeah, that Snow Leopard doing some really good work up on the top, and it is going to be routing, but it did some decent damage nonetheless. On the other side of things, we do have those Coast Fight Dervishes are going to be starting to put some pressure on as the spawn got way out of position. At this point, with where they're at, Kislev can really take them out with anything that they really want to, and the spawn at this point just teleport them out, try and get whatever value you can back from them, because they are not going to be helping anytime soon. Spawn Blue Horrors trying to hold back the Snow Leopard on the other side with the Coast Fight Dervishes. Snow Leopard trying to do what it can against those spawn, but again, it is struggling a little bit from just being how squishy that thing is, and it is on the brink of breaking here on that far flank. But Kislev has put some pretty decent pressure across the board, though they are starting to lose point 3, and point 1, though, is pretty much well under their own control. So Tzeentch definitely is starting to fall back little by little. Even in the damage value, they did start ahead, but now they are starting to slip and are losing that field presence more and more, while Kislev is just going to be very content with not pushing too heavily on this side. They pushed a little, probably too heavily with the Kosovite Dervishes and that Snow Leopard, and have been punished a little bit on that flank, but they're doing an excellent job with the rest of their Cossars just kind of sitting back, but they have lost right now all of their frontline infantry, all of those Sargard getting pulled back, and that does kind of open up the door a little bit to start putting for Tzeentch to kind of push in a little bit more onto that second point. But they just don't have the numbers right now to deal with that. Looks like we're going to be getting probably a little bit of a mistake on this side. Well, I mean, Forsaken, actually no, those are Cossars and those Winged Lancers, so that's actually some very decent value there. I thought those were still the Chaos Knights from earlier, so some pretty decent value. Did some friendly shots to those Forsaken, but some pretty decent value all around for Tzeentch on that army ability. But Kislev looking very strong here in the late stages. Just Tzeentch being triple capped at this point. There's just no way back, I think, for this point, because they themselves would pretty much need a triple cap, and I mean they would at this point with what the score is at. And Tzeentch is, well, they're not really known for being able to triple cap their opponents, and is going to be withdrawing. So Rinless is going to be taking that first game. So we'll take a look at the after battle report here real quick. Update the scorecard as Rinless takes game 1, playing Kislev remarkably well against Tzeentch. So let's take a look at how things did. So the Ice Witch was probably the biggest slip up very early on in that fight, was actually still able to get 1200 value. Kind of surprised with that. I think we did probably see, I think we saw a spell later on in that fight, but got really just surrounded by spawn early on. Patriarch not doing a whole lot there, and the Sargard just held that line, but all of these Cossars did really well, getting tons of value, pretty much using all of their ammunition across the board. The one chariot that we saw, these heavy war sleds, got 1100
600, so nothing too great to write home about. But really, their capping power that, not the chariots had those, but the Kislev had in general in that fight, they just played that really well for domination, and that's kind of where things did turn out. As for the Tzeentch side of things, not necessarily getting a whole lot of damage for their units. The blue horrors, as they are wont to do, did really well, but nothing else. Even those Chaos Knights didn't do too great. Exalted Flamer did really well, get some nice shots into those really expensive Sargard, so that definitely helped in breaking that line, though they just took a little too long in doing that, and that is pretty much, I mean, these Screamers got 0 value in total. But that is going to be it for our first game, so we'll be getting into our second one here pretty quick. Second one is going to be on Crossing of the Sea Claws, so a map we have seen already in this tournament. And it is now going to be Dodak's pick for his 2 into his pool, so we'll see what he has for his... Actually, no, Dodak picked on the first one because he's top of the bracket. It is Rinless's turn to pick here for this one. And map is set, just let them know so they can get a look for that. Crossing the Sea Claws, yeah, that's the first map that we've seen in the first 2 semifinals. So a lot of distance between the cap points. So Nurgle is kind of out of the options for this one. So probably won't be seeing them in this particular match, though I'm sure we'll be seeing them again. Actually, Rinless might be considering it. No, he is going with Tzeentch and Ogres for his 2 picks. Range factions, able to capitalize on the choke points, kind of help to keep their range units protected. And Tzeentch we've seen on this matchup many times before, and we won't be seeing the Tzeentch mirror because we just saw Dodak play Tzeentch, but we'll see what we have, and Dodak is going to be going with Khorne, so I think he's very familiar with kind of Khorne. Tzeentch is kind of some of his main factions from the looks of things. We've seen him play it quite a few times, and Rinless is going to be responding with Tzeentch. So again, this is a matchup we have seen already, as we have Rinless and Dodak with, again, Tzeentch and Khorne for those 2 going into game 2 of this best of 5 series. So we'll see how things are going to kind of shake out for this one. So let's see. Close enough windows. I can see if they're ready to go. So Rinless is set. We're just waiting on Dodak to get things underway for our next game. It should be some good fun on this one. Again, yeah, this is another matchup, fairly even on both sides. Where Khorne just has that really good staying power against Tzeentch in general with all the armor, the shields. They can really do some pretty good work there, though of course Tzeentch does have some ability or some items or some units that can really kind of push through. Flamers are a great example there, but they are really squishy, so they do need to be a little mindful with protecting them. Forsaken Spawn are also pretty decent tools here, as long as Khorne hasn't gone too heavy in that anti-large department themselves, which is rather risky with all of the blue horrors and pink horrors. So lots of different ways this matchup can go on both sides, which kind of makes it one of the more interesting ones, I think, for where things are at right now with Warhammer 3. So again, just waiting on Dodak, and we will be getting underway in hopefully just a minute or 2 more. And again, I hope everyone is enjoying the tournament up until this point on this Friday evening. And Dodak is ready, so we are going to load on in, and then we're going to take a little sneak peek at what the armies have. So for Rinless on Tzeentch, we do have a Herald. We have 4 Forsaken, 2 Spawn, and 4 Blue Horrors. As for the Khorne side of things, with Dodak, we have 1 Cultist, Skull Crusher, or Blood Crusher, I should say. Then we have 2 dual weapons. We have a Halberd, a Bloodletter, a Spawn, and 3 units of Chaos Warrior. So a little bit of everything on the Khorne side, trying to at least match up with something. So probably expecting to see a front line of those warriors And they're going to be wanting to kind of keep the spawn safe from all of the blue horrors earlier on, and try and just kind of pull their attention away. As for the Herald of Tzeentch, for its kit, we do have the Locust Conjuration, Chromatic Tome, Blue Fire, the Infernal Gateway, and that Fires of Change. So pretty standard stuff on him. All the tools that you need to deal with the high armor that Khorne has. As for the Khorne forces, again, all of the infantry that we saw earlier. The Cultist is going to be rolling in just with that Gate of Khorne. Is going to be on foot, though. Generally, probably would like to see him on horse, just because having that mobility against Tzeentch, able to drop that summon where you need him to be, is really helpful in that regard. So just kind of dropping him just on that back line onto Flamers or something like that is a really good way to kind of use that summon. But instead is just going to be flooding the field, and there's going to be plenty of armor to kind of get through. Again, Bloodletters and Spawn, though, are going to have to be really careful with all of these blue horrors.
But it is merely the absence of sanity.
Tzeentch giving us a little pep talk going into the fight. But otherwise, yeah, Tzeentch is going to be just diving straight forward into point 2. Does not look like they are going to be really pulling off too much onto the other points. We have some Forsaken, a couple of blue horrors here, just kind of pulling the attention for full units, and they are pulling quite a bit in that. So we do have 2 of the dual weapons are going to be moving with those Blood Crushers down towards point 3. So that is a lot of value on that side of things. And these Blood Crushers, though, should get some nice, decent charges. Now, these guys, they don't have any shields, but they do have 100 armor, so they will be pretty resilient to those blue horrors kind of coming in. But they do need to be a little bit mindful of that, especially now that we see in those Screamers and those Spawn coming in as well. They do not want to be tangling too long with those units at all. Those Screamers, bonus versus large armor piercing, will do a number towards those Blood Crushers. Everything else is kind of sitting back and relaxing around the center point. Those Spawn probably getting a little too far forward there on that side, but Khorne is probably putting a bit more of that pressure down towards point 3, then towards that center point, and then are going to be trying to elect then to charge back up that hill and try and put the pressure in that later stage, because they are going to be trying to deal with everything down here for the time being. Fury's kind of coming in, and they will do a number to those Screamers, and actually probably lose exceptionally little in return. So these Screamers definitely need to pull on back, but they are going to be getting caught out. Furies are going to be coming in to respond from Tzeentch. But it looks like they are going to be in just the nick of time. Furies are going to be dropping back for Khorne, taking some shots from the blue horrors, and those Chaos Furies of Tzeentch actually might be getting the charge, so that could definitely turn the engagement, which would otherwise be in the advantage for the Khorne Furies, considering they do have that, but they do wisely drop down right into the ground, and just in the nick of time, the Tzeentch player does spot that has happened. So a nice heads-up play by both sides. They're able to kind of pull things back and drop those Furies down into a nice protected area. So well played on that side. The Bloodletters are going to be coming in. Definitely needed to get that summon off, because those Cultists had taken a ton of damage so far. I mean, the Spawn really getting surrounded on that side. But they should be able to deal with those Forsaken pretty quickly, and those do end up rounding, and that is going to leave those Spawn nice and isolated. And I think Khorne needs to start kind of pushing up to get into all of that range units, because that is a lot of range kind of coming into the Khorne forces, and they are going to be starting to push in to try and take point 3 just as that point does open up. The Tzeentch Furies do drop, but the Khorne Furies as well are going to be disintegrating themselves, so they themselves are going to be fallen from the field. Tzeentch very strong presence on point 2, and a few units from Khorne need to kind of actually push into point 1 unless they're waiting just on the outside so they don't get too far ahead, and play those points a little bit more wisely, because Tzeentch will overall probably trade higher into Khorne in the course of a battle. Right now it is pretty even, with Tzeentch just a little bit ahead in that fight, but these blue horrors have plenty of ammunition left and are now going to start pumping their damage into some rather juicy targets, and a nice use of that Infernal Gateway is going to be dropping down onto those Chaos Warriors, doing a bunch of damage, dragging them in. while those spawn are just getting shot to pieces by these blue horrors. Now, their own spawn is taking quite a bit of damage, but with all the assistance that Tzeentch is given, they are going to be able to do some very nice work, and we are seeing an Exalted Bloodthirster for the Lord going to be charging in. He's going to be trying to put some heavy pressure onto that Herald of Tzeentch, and he himself, that is a very expensive unit to be bringing into the fight, and it takes a long time to kind of wait to get the funds up to even bring that in. So usually if you don't see it on the opening army, you're not going to be seeing that Bloodthirster, but it is on the field, and we're going to be seeing how well it is going to be able to do. Is it going to be charging into these Chaos Furies, kind of keeping them at bay, so he's going to be causing some havoc here, and Tzeentch is going to be responding with their own Screamers, who have had that bonus versus large to try and whittle down that Bloodthirster. Blood Crusher does charge into those pink horrors, but they are taking some shots now in from those pink horrors, and they are not going to be too much longer for this world, as Khorne now is putting pressure on to the second point, and we're seeing those Khorne warriors kind of charging in against those Forsaken, and now having taken point one, the second unit is going to be responding because they are going to be needing that assistance down against Forsaken. Regular Chaos Warriors are not really all set against an infantry melee battle. But Khorne is sitting in a fairly decent spot overall, except for that damage value. They need to start kind of trading a little bit better, but this nice surround-in going to be breaking those Chaos Warriors, now going to allowing these Forsaken and Blue Horse to kind of push in, but they are going to be kind of catching out these, or at least zoning out these Bloodthirsters, but it's a very expensive zoning out tool, dropping in that army ability, that third tier, to keep these Exalted Bloodletters at bay, and these Bloodletters would have taken pretty minimal damage with their resistance to the magic, but they're just going to be charging in nonetheless. So they did end up taking the bulk of that fire, but still, that is not quite worth it, I think, from the Tzeentch side of things, to be trying to just screen out one unit of Exalted Bloodletters, no matter how expensive they may be. Chaos Warhound's now going to start to put some more pressure in, with some Furies also kind of diving in to support against the opponent's Furies. But these blue horrors are going to be just raining down fire against those Bloodletters, doing some really good work there. In the center ranks, the Bloodthirster is just going to be wading through melee, doing some decent damage to the spawn, but he is taking quite a bit of damage in return with all of the spawn surrounding him, and the spawn of Tzeentch themselves do have that armor sundering, so they will be reducing his armor by 30, so really allowing pretty much all of these Tzeentch forces to do some pretty decent work. Now the rest of the forces kind of surrounding the battlefield, just kind of taking a look back, both of these Chaos Warriors of Khorne are just getting held up by these Forsaken and the spawn, and the blue horrors are just going to be able to have a field day against these halberd units here, just getting some very decent shots in against some units that are not designed to deal with that engagement whatsoever. And Tzeentch looking very strong here in the later stages. So the longer this game has gone on, the better Tzeentch has been looking. Their trades have been very good up until this point. They are slightly behind in damage, but they now do have 2 of the points, so they will start kind of pulling ahead ever so slightly with actually, as I kind of give you guys a little vertigo as I go right underneath the map there, trying to see which unit is kind of coming back to the field here. But Fleshhounds, Exalted Bloodthirster, and these Bloodthirsters are actually going to be able to kind of finish off this pocket of the Tzeentch forces, and these Exalted Bloodletters are still going fairly strong here with the assistance of these Chaos Warhounds, are starting to kind of try and do some poke damage to the spawn, but with these Forsaken charging in and how low those Exalted Bloodletters are, this is going to be staying in Tzeentch's possession. The Exalted Bloodthirster has gotten on top of that Herald, but Herald does have the speed to help evade it, as long as the Tzeentch player is going to be on top of things, while the battle in the center ranks is still going fairly decently for Tzeentch. We do get these Fleshhounds getting a very nice rear charge into those spawn, and Forsaken instantly breaking the Forsaken, and should deal with the spawn fairly quickly, and that is going to allow them to kind of push a little bit more heavily into the second point, which is slowly actually being capped here by Khorne. But with these Forsaken coming in, that should balance things out. And of course, we do have both of these pink horrors should be able to get onto this point, and again kind of bring that back into Tzeentch's control. As you kind of zoom back into Tzeentch, again just really controlling the battlefield on this side of things. The Forsaken spawn dealt with those Exalted Bloodthirsters, and that Herald of Tzeentch does dive down into his units, and that is going to pull these Furies and that Exalted Bloodthirster into a place he does not want to be at this time. All of those spawn are going to get a nice surround on, and their mass, and you can see them pull forward ever so slightly and try and get that full surround and hold him in place. Because if he's held down in place by those spawn, I don't think he's going to be taking off again in the rest of this fight. He will most likely go down. Swinging back over, Khorne is pushing heavier and heavier into point 2. They've been able to deal with kind of the surrounding units. We do have these spawn and these pink horrors to kind of get around in, but as long as these flesh hounds, they should be able to make quick work of those pink horrors, get some nice charges in, and the spawn of Tzeentch are coming in without any infantry support. They do have some blue horrors, but these guys are so very low. So really the spawn and these halberds are going to do very decent damage against those spawn when they are all stuck by their lonesome. And those flesh hounds and these chaos warhounds are keeping those pink horrors at bay. So Khorne is taking that second point back, as there is going to be some pressure from the blue horrors, but those flesh hounds going to be quickly in response, going to be diving around and trying to kind of make sure that that stays in their possession. Slowly taking point 2 back, but point 3 not a whole lot going the way for Khorne, and down goes that Exalted Bloodthirster, as I expected, once it got surrounded by all of those spawn. And spawn done their job, so away they shall go back towards spawn so they can get back onto the field a little bit quicker themselves. So Rinless now definitely needs to be coming back into point 2, taking that second point away from Khorne, though a nice spell can be dropping down, as well as the 3rd tier army ability. Going to be raining hot fire against these halberds, and hopefully breaking this entire pocket of Khorne to allow them to kind of push it back into it. So they does do some decent damage. Might just be able to break these halberds and these warriors, especially with the spawn in support. We still have a very healthy unit of halberds right here, and they don't necessarily have the firepower to deal with them. Those flesh hounds have kept the reinforcements from Tzeentch from really kind of coming in and using their focus fire on them. So they have done a fairly remarkable job there at holding them in, but now the floodgates are open and Tzeentch is going to be charging down the hill. They need that point back. They have a little bit of time to take it back, but they will need that in due time. And the spawn probably would very much not like to be engaging with some halberds here, but they are going to be getting stuck in. But they are at least keeping the attention of these halberds, while these pink horrors are going to be getting some nice volleys into the rear. So a little bit of sacrifice, but they are going to be doing some decent damage to those halberds. Nonetheless, these other halberds not quite broken just yet from that initial engagement, but Tzeentch is coming in with numbers aplenty and are going to be quickly taking that point 2 back into their possession, and that damage value is pretty heavily in their favor. So we'll see what Khorne can even muster at this point. They don't have much of a field presence kind of looking around the field. These flesh hounds getting taken out actually by those Chaos Furies, and on this side they just don't have the units to really kind of push in and keep all of these just the massive horrors, as Tzeentch does take point 2 back into their own possession, and they will remain in the lead coming into the last stretch of this match. So now they're just going to be able to just use that focus fire, because there is not enough units from Khorne coming in to put pressure onto all of these units. We have 3 units of blue horrors, with a lot of, actually 4 units in total, getting with full ammunition, 2 units of pink horrors, and then just spawn and Forsaken in that center rank. And they're just going to be able to keep at least these units busy and just allowing the rest of their range units to just rain down fire upon them. So Khorne seeing it, they are going to be conceding this fight. They just did have the field presence there in that late game. So let's switch to the after battle report here, kind of see how things did fare on both sides. Update the scorecard, as Rinless does take the lead 2-0, as it is now match point for him to take the victory in this next fight. But for the forces, the Herald of Tzeentch did rather well, almost 3,000 in total. Spawn not doing anything too remarkable, but the Forsaken getting about 1,000, probably averaging more close to about 700 for each of them. The Blue Horrors did rather well, as of course they are wont to do. None of the Exalted Flavors did come out onto the field. Otherwise, the remaining spawn and the Forsaken doing some okay work, and nothing too remarkable on the reserves for Tzeentch's side. As for Khorne, it's kind of a little bit of a lackluster with their Occultists. The Bloodthirsters really didn't do all too great, as did a lot of their infantry. They just kind of get a little too slow to react to a lot of the things there. Spawn did some okay work on that front. As for the reserves, Exalted Bloodthirster really got caught out, but it still was able to get 2,400 in total value, so still did some decent damage on that side of things. But again, it's probably just got just surrounded by spawn one too many times there, and just got dragged down into the mud for the rest of the units. Nothing too great. Furies trading pretty decently into the Zinch side, and the Fleshhounds did pretty good work on top of that. Now for our final, or not final, our first match point. Let's see what we have for the map. So the map is going to be Arnheim for this one. It looks like Dadak has already gone with Nurgle and Cathay for this one. Already ready to go for his picks. So we'll see how things are going to be faring on this next one. So now it's Rinless's turn to make his own selection. So against Nurgle and Cathay, so we have Zinch is off the table. And his first one was Kislev. So Nurgle, Cathay, Khorne, but with Arnheim, it is kind of Nurgle favored overall, but Khorne wouldn't necessarily be a bad choice in this matchup. So we'll actually give you guys a little bit of a look here at what the map's going to be looking like, since we're not going to be seeing any of the armies. So we've seen this map already a couple times today, but we do have the high ground being on the left side of the map here, with a point up in the middle of these two cliffs, another point right at the base, and another point off to the far right. And that is going to be where those points do in the far. And with the deployment zones on this map, it kind of makes that far point really hard for any slow-moving faction to put any decent pressure on it, because all of the deployments are right against the cliffside, either on the top or the bottom. So nothing really is any close to that far point in that matchup. So while we wait, we'll see if there is any update on the faction. So Rinless is in fact going to be going Khorne, kind of as I might have expected with that one. It is just probably the best faction available with what you're kind of going up against, because honestly, I think Zinch or Kislev probably would have done some decent work against those factions. But yeah, we'll see how things are going to kind of square off here. We don't have a response yet from Dadak on his choice, because it is Nurgle or Cathay. We have not seen, I'm confident with that one. We have not seen Cathay yet in these tournaments for the North American one that I have casted as of recently. So we'll see, actually, and we are now going to be seeing Cathay for the first time as they face off against Khorne. So they do have plenty of room to work with. This is going to be probably a little bit different play style than how, like Nurgle. We've seen Nurgle, I think, every single time we played on this map. We've probably seen Nurgle, where they take that top point and then push down into the bottom one, where Cathay definitely is going to be wanting that range. So they're going to want to set up more probably on the bottom field and use their mobility to kind of keep the top point honest. So we'll see if that's how things are going to be working out, though it is going to be kind of giving Khorne a little bit more cover if they kind of want to come into the range units of Cathay, because that cliffside is actually going to help Khorne a bit in that regard. So Khorne might very well decide to take that top point and kind of push in to the lower ones, but we'll see how things are going to be faring in this game 3. This is a best of 5 series after all, so we're not quite at the end of the line just yet. Everything's been going pretty smoothly up until this point. And while we kind of wait for armies to be selected, we'll kind of take a pick at kind of what the bracket has been up to this point. So Tim the Wilder and Dadak were on the top side of the bracket, but they were the second semifinal series of the day. Dadak won that series 2-0. Some very close fights in that one. Dadak played the domination style very well, able to get those points when and where he needed them. The first semifinal on the bottom of the bracket was Rinless and Subutai, and Rinless did have a very good showing there, and he has been showing it again in this final best of 5 series. His first 2 games have gone really well, and he is ready to go. We're still waiting on Dadak, so we'll be getting into this next one here pretty soon, and then we'll be getting underway on to Arnheim and seeing how Cathay is going to be making its grand appearance for all of our viewing pleasure. Hopefully it is not just to see Cathay. Hopefully they have a pretty good showing. With the added funds, they are able to kind of bring a bit more to the table to protect their ranged units. Of course, it does make it a little harder because they have to push off more units on the other side, and Khorne is a little bit of a sticky foe to kind of push off with their heavy armor. And Cathay doesn't have the, I guess, like the spells and like the flamers that Tzeentch has to deal with the armor. They don't have kind of strong, they don't have like quick chariots or anything like that. And like they still have the terracotta sentinels, which might still be a fairly decent choice in this matchup, but they are slow, and that is not necessarily what you want to be going with. But we are going to be loading in, so let's switch over, get a little sneak peek at what we're going to be seeing. So we have Herald, Double Cultist, 5 Chaos Warriors, and 3 Chaos Furies for the Khorne side of things, led by Rinless. As for Dakasin, we do have Yao Ming with the Dragon Celestial Guard with the halberds and the crossbows, and then it looks like we have a cannon and some Jade Warriors. We actually have the I don't remember the name of that unit off the top of my head. It is very much like the shotgun unit for the Vampire Coast, but we will be seeing them in due time. So for the Khorne Lords and Heroes, the Herald of Khorne going to be on its Juggernaut, going to be diving forward with the mobility, having both of the cultists also on horseback. But the Herald does have the Locust of Wrath as well as the Revel in Slaughter, and of course he does have his Hellblade, which is a default for him. And then Gates of Khorne on both of the cultists, and that is it for those guys. We already saw their army from earlier on, so let's swing over for the rest of the forces of Grand Cathay. So we have Jade Warriors in the front. We have the Celestial Dragon Guard and Iron Hail Gunners. For those guys, they have that armor piercing. Now they are rather short range, only 90 on that, but they will do a number to anything, and they will also help deter those Chaos Furies from getting on top of those Grand Cannons because they have very high DPS and a very short range. Peasant Long Spearmen, and then of course Yao Ming, the Storm Dragon, coming in with the Wrath of the Storm, as well as her Kosher Transformation. We have a Regrowth to kind of keep her healed up nice and good, and might be seeing some Terracotta Sentinels in the reserves. We do have seen some rather expensive units coming out from Tadok's reserves up until this point. Talons of the Night, another very good unit considering it does do 100% armor piercing, so another nice little spell to be using, but it's not nearly the damage output that the Infernal Gateway has. Of course, it is a little bit cheaper too, I do believe. 14 Winds of Magic, so not ridiculously cheaper, but I think cheaper nonetheless. Looks like Yao Ming or Miao Ying is going to be quickly getting into her dragon form, going to be trying to put some deterrence to these cultists and those heralds, and the cannons is going to be raining out and doing some very nice damage early on, almost in sync, but one cannon is lagging a little bit behind from the rest and is going to be trying to do some decent damage to those cultists, but the cultist is able to dodge some of those shots, but did take 25% of its health right off the get-go. But if you can eliminate one of the summons off early on, that's pretty good. But this going to be going for a little bit more static troops as the shots do rain above these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, though, and those Iron Hail Gunners are going to be opening up into those Chaos Furies who dive down into those Grand Cannons, but the Spearmen are going to be there to respond, as well as the Great Longbow Riders are going to be coming in to also kind of peel off all of these Chaos Furies, and are going to be able to probably make some pretty quick work of these guys. But the cannons are in pretty dire straits, losing one of them, already going down in an explosive burst of fire, and they have lost their touch to those Grand Cannons. It looks like more and more of them are actually going to be all going down, even though they have pulled off their units. These Chaos Furies continue to do some decent damage and are eliminating their efficiency very quickly on, and on to think the Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen are under pressure by the cultists, as well as actually just both of the cultists. The Herald is off someplace else. Miao Ying is going to be kind of coming in, landing a nice hit against that cultist of Khorne, trying to keep them away from those Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen, trying to keep these guys firing because they are one of the best tools to deal with the high armor. But Khorne coming in very, very aggressive in this fight, pushing very quickly into Cathay and is not letting them get set up at all, and is just trying to throw whatever they can into the back line. It looks like we also have some Flesh Hounds coming in, and that is just pulling all of their attention forward, and is now going to be allowing these Chaos Warriors to just charge into that front line, and they will trade well against pretty much everything that Grand Cathay has. All of those Jade Warriors not going to be able to cut it against them, but Miao Ying is able to do some pretty decent work against these cultists up until this point, so is able to kind of keep them at bay, and would like to kind of pull their Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen away. Routes one off, now leaving just the one. Iron Hail Gunners might get some decent, and it looks like a Talons of the Night is going to be going down right into the middle of these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, doing a lot of nice juicy damage to them, completely missing these Jade Warriors. So a very nice spell cast on that one. Iron Hail Gunners do fall though to the Flesh Hounds, as well as all these Chaos Warriors and the Herald of Khorne. Great Longbow Riders coming in to try and support, but so much of Grand Cathay's army is in disarray, and with that pressure down, now you can see that points 1, 2, and 3 are all under control of Khorne, and they are just keeping Cathay on the back foot. Even though Cathay is ahead in the total damage, their backline is completely in disarray, and they are going to have to push against so many units to try and get back to those points. And it is one thing coming back from a 2-1 deficit over the course of a fight. It is a lot more tricky to come back from a 3-0 deficit if that is let to stay for too long, because you then get very dangerously close into having to 3-cap, and with Cathay, that is almost an impossibility at that point. So they are still doing some decent damage now. Now, it is only a matter of time here before the Khorne charge kind of slowly peters out a little bit, because Cathay just continues to trade remarkably well, even though with Khorne just diving in on all fronts. Another very nice cast of Talons of the Night should be able to break these Chaos Warriors here, even though they are engaged with those Jade Warriors. The Herald of Khorne might break the Jade Warriors himself, and Miao Ying as well is kind of coming in, looking to kind of, again, just continue to harass those cultists. We do have some more Crossbowmen, Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen, and there is that Terracotta Sentinel coming in to help assist. And those Grand Cannon crew is back, and they are coming forward, but I think at this point you want to just pull these guys back, because those cannons, I think they might just be all just gone at this point. Maybe one is left, the others are kind of lying in a little bit of a wreck. But Miao Ying with that Terracotta Sentinel is going to be starting to try and push back against the tide of Khorne, and they have a lot of ground to cover because they need to get onto these points fairly quickly, at least to take one back, or start maybe putting some pressure onto that top point, because they could probably throw some mobility that way. It is just some Chaos Warriors, so they might be able to break them in that regards. But Cathay just needs to just try and push and do as much damage as quickly as they can, because they are running out of time. Another Talons of the Night. So the Talons of the Night have been doing really good jobs so far. They've been really on top of the cast. So again, Chaos Warriors and those Bloodletters can be taking quite a bit of damage. Not as much to the Bloodletters, but still just chunking away at their HP, taking them down to around about a quarter. But Miao Ying does kind of come out of her Dragon phase, and is going to be helping to kind of provide a little bit more assistance with a few more of her kits. But yeah, things are still not looking all too great for Cathay. Great Longbow Riders have been able to kind of keep the damage to a minimum, and the Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen are kind of charging on forward, but things just continue to just drag on way too long for Cathay's liking. On the back line too, we are getting some pressure from these Chaos Warhounds. It's going to be pulling the attention of more units kind of come in from the reserves, and they are just going to be trying to kind of put some pressure, but they are slowly walking their way forward bit by bit, and they are in sore need of a capture point soon if they want to be able to kind of drag their way back into this fight. Terracotta Sentinel kind of charging forward, and I think it's just trying to do just that, to get as much just pressure forward onto these front points, just throwing anything that they can, because there isn't really anything from Khorne either. They do have these Chaos Warriors of Khorne, but the Terracotta Sentinel at least needs to get some kind of pressure here. And the Khorne forces, though, the infantry is kind of slowly going away. The Bloodletters, more units, though, is kind of getting pulled back. But a nice Talon of the Night dropping right on top of these Flesh Hounds and that Herald, though you do not want to be going in there, Celestial Dragon Guard, just yet. Got to wait for that to kind of finish things up. But Miao Ying is still completely surrounded by these Flesh Hounds and that Herald of Khorne there definitely needs to either kind of get back into her dragon state, and that is looks like just a little attack animation there. Thought she was going to be doing just that. Still pretty dead even here on that center point for Khorne, and Cathay actually going into Cathay's favor. So Terracotta Sentinel has more capture weight than an entire unit of Chaos Warriors of Khorne. That is a good thing to know, as they are going to be, I mean, barely more capture weight. They are slowly dragging their way in, but they need pressure now on all of these points, and they are definitely in that 3-cap range. They need all 3 caps at least at some point in this fight if they're going to be able to drag things back. Damage value is very much in their favor. They are 3,000 points ahead in damage, so things are starting to kind of push into their favor, as Khorne doesn't really have much left onto the field. They are putting all of their eggs into this top basket by the looks of things. Chaos Warriors, Bloodletters, and that Herald all regrouping up onto that top point, but they are going to be facing off against Terracotta Sentinel number 2, as it is going to be charging forward, and these Chaos Warriors not going to be able to do a whole lot of damage. Herald might be able to do something, but Khorne is not necessarily out of the woods just yet. They are just tossing things into these cap points. Chaos Warriors on this down point are going to be trying to delay these Grand Cannon crew who have pushed in, and they should make very quick work of them, but these Jade Warriors should be able to break them back on that front, and more units going to be filtering their way in. Cathay almost has point 1, but I think they are just pushing too little too late. And Rinless, I think, is just going to be able to hold on, as Cathay just doesn't have the focus on this top point to take that. They just took, just way too long to kind of push themselves out against Khorne. They have taken the lower fields at this point, but that is going to be all she wrote, as Khorne does use that aggressive strategy to its benefit and just held Cathay back for just long enough. Because, I mean, if this game went to like maybe 7,000 points, Cathay might have another enough of a push to kind of push things back. But as it is, that is going to be it. Rinless takes the win 3-0. So we'll update the scorecard, take a quick look at the after battle reports, and then we'll kind of close things off. But for the Khorne side of things, it was again just a massive rush. That was what they did. They just went as quickly as they could into Cathay with all of their mobility, and just shut things down to get their front line engaged. And then they just held on for as long as they could, and they held on for long enough in the end, because really none of these Chaos Warriors did any kind of good value. The Furies did pretty decent work, able to get some good value against like the cannons, the crossbowmen, and stuff like that. Iron Hail Gunners on top of that. But the rest of the units here, Bloodletters were there again for the speed to get to the points that they needed, and of course all of the Fleshhounds did pretty decent work as well. As for the units of Grand Cathay, Miao Ying getting an even 3,000 on her damage value. Some pretty good work there. Talons of the Night were really on point for her. But the units that kind of really matter the most, like the Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen, excellent units to deal with the Chaos Warriors, but did not have the option to get their shots in. Chaos Furies and those Fleshhounds had a thing or two to say about that. Rest units of Terracotta Sentinels, pretty decent capture weight, but not quick enough to get to the points. The Great Longwing Riders did whatever they could to try and kind of clear the skies, but they fought valiantly, getting almost 1,500, but just not quite enough on that front. And that is going to be it. We'll update the bracket showing Rinless in the final, but again, well played to all. Some very good games there. Rinless definitely had a very good showing in the semis and finals, and some very exciting games nonetheless. So I think that is pretty much going to be all she wrote. I don't think we have anything else on the docket. Let's take a quick look at Discord, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yes, just them saying GG, and thank you guys all for joining on another Friday evening for a, Western time zone, a little bit more in line with those who have to work on that side of the world. Otherwise, it was very good fun. Lots of fun matches. Got to see a few new factions thrown into the mix. So that's always some good enjoyment, regardless of how well they do. But yeah, again, thank you guys for joining. We're going to close things off. And as always, have a good one.